Mr. Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks for the blessings which have been bestowed on us. Laying aside all personal interests, we acknowledge the King and pray for guidance in our deliberations, that we may conduct the affairs of this House with wisdom, justice, mercy and humility for the welfare and peace of New Zealand. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Chris Hipkins. Chris Bishop. That's a second day in a row I withdraw and apologise. I must have Hickman's on the brain or something. But the Honourable Chris Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welcome back to all members. Today the House will adjourn until the 11th of February, and that week we will complete the debate on the Prime Minister's statement. We'll also have the second readings of the Customer and Product Data Bill and the District Court Judges Amendment Bill.
Petitions. No petitions have been delivered to the clerk for presentation. A paper has been delivered for presentation.
2023-24 Annual Report for the Teaching Council of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
That paper is published under the authority of the House. No select committee reports have been delivered for presentation. No bills have been introduced. The House comes to questions for oral answer. The first, in the name of HÖHANA LYNDON.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Associate Minister of Health and asks, does she stand by her statement that nicotine is incredibly addictive? And if so, what evidence-based solutions or actions, if any, has she taken to support people to quit nicotine?
The Honourable Casey Costello.
Mr. Speaker, nicotine is incredibly addictive. There's not a single person in this House would dispute that. Unfortunately, yet again, the members are opposite, continue to conflate two different issues. So we will try again to clarify. Smoking kills. It harms nearly every organ of the body, causing cancer, heart disease, stroke, lung disease, the list goes on. But let's be clear, nicotine is what keeps people smoking. It is not what makes it deadly. That's why this government is focused on supporting smokers to manage their addiction to nicotine by accessing lower harm nicotine products as alternatives to cigarettes. This has been standard practice for a considerable period of time. Once smokers have successfully quit, stop smoking services are able to support individuals to shift their focus to quitting vaping.
Supplementary. Why is her government funding RELX vapes as smoking cessation devices when, unlike all other smoking cessation tools, they have not been approved by MedSafe and have not been through a robust procurement process?
Mr. Speaker, the procurement process has been complied with. The product is completely compliant and safe. It is supplied by a company with no affiliations to the tobacco industry, and it is completely compliant product and New Zealand owned. The issue that we are talking about is that this product is being funded by the Innovation Fund as a tool to apply to alternative products that will help smokers quit smoking. It is only provided through quit smoking services and only to adult smokers and only to those who have committed to a program of quit smoking.
Supplementary. Does she acknowledge that RELX determined an unusually high nicotine content for these vapes compared to approved smoking cessation tools, making them more addictive and therefore maximising RELX's financial gain?
Mr Speaker, yet again we are conflating the issues. We are talking about a product that is less harmful than smoking and therefore will allow long-term addicted smokers to quit smoking.
Supplementary. What is her response to leaked recordings of RELX employees stating, quote, "We've made effing bribes in New Zealand and Australia," and quote, that the thing, right, especially in difficult markets or markets with heavy strict regulations, all you have to do is circumnavigate them, is to go into the grey channels, end quote.
Mr Speaker, could she repeat the question? I'm not sure what the question was.
What is your response to the quote?
We'll hear the question again in silence, but I think some care needs to be taken over the question.
What is her response to the leaked recordings of RELX employees stating, quote, "We've made effing bribes in New Zealand and Australia," and quote, that's the thing, right? Especially in difficult markets or markets with heavy, strict regulations, all you have to do is circumnavigate them, is to go into grey channels, end quote.
Mr Speaker, my response to that summation of quotes is the fact that she's missed out the section where the people in the recording are saying, no, 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 that's not what we do, and also that this is a 2023 recording in Singapore, which has no connection to New Zealand markets or New Zealanders.
Supplementary. What is her response to leaked recordings of... What is her response to leaked recordings of RELX employees stating, quote, "I'm talking about making like government payments," and in response, quote, "We don't do that visibly in Australia and New Zealand, but government payments are not a problem for us because these are extremely, how do I put it, subtle," end quote.
Mr Speaker, the inference that this New Zealand government has received bribes is abhorrent, and I reject the premise of that question.
Supplementary. Will she ensure the procurement process for RELX vapes undergoes independent investigation in light of these comments from RELX employees? And if not, how will she address the concerns from New Zealanders about the procurement of these devices?
Mr Speaker, I have met with officials today. I'm confident in the procurement processes. We have produced a product that will allow smokers to quit smoking, and we stand by that program of work.
Question 2, Jenny Mycroft.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to Minister of Customs and asks, what updates can she provide about the New Zealand Customs Service's efforts to improve services using technology?
The Honourable Casey Costello.
Mr Speaker, I am pleased to announce that New Zealand Customs Service, who are an exemplary government department, recently announced that more travellers are now using the digital traveller declaration than the paper version. Everyone entering New Zealand must complete a declaration, and Customs and its border partners have worked tirelessly to encourage Kiwis and overseas visitors to use the declaration, which can be done 24 hours in advance of travel rather than on board a flight, and makes it easy to fill out multiple declarations before getting off a plane. Downloading the New Zealand Traveller Declaration app has additional benefits for families and frequent travellers. The digital declaration delivers better public services by supporting efficient processing by border agencies and streamlining passengers' experience entering New Zealand. I would encourage everyone to give the digital declaration a go the next time they return to New Zealand.
Supplementary. What other technology improvements are delivering better services for passengers arriving to or departing New Zealand?
Mr Speaker, from September last year, e-passport holders from all 27 EU member states became able to use e-gates on arrival to and departure from New Zealand. This expansion means that travellers from 37 countries have access to automatic border processing in New Zealand. This represents over 85% of all arriving and departing travellers. I'm also advised that Customs is finalising plans to progressively open e-gates access to remaining visa waiver countries. Seamless and efficient border processing not only improves traveller experience, it also frees up frontline customer staff to increase their focus on critical tasks like assessing high-risk travellers.
Supplementary. Are technology improvements also supporting New Zealand businesses?
Mr Speaker, in the environment of saying yes and importing and committing to economic growth, Customs has made significant progress in making it easier for businesses to spend less time on paperwork and more time focused on their business. Last year, Customs launched the Alcohol Excise Duty Estimator on its website and updated duty alcohol application forms and permits. Both of these updates aim to support businesses to make excise-related information easier to understand and more readily available. In addition, the launch of the My Customs account platform in June last year delivers improved accessibility, with deferred payment account holders given the ability to view their balance and transactions, download statements and immediately access the information that they need online. Customs deferred payment schemes allows importers to defer payments on their customs charges, consolidating them into a monthly invoice. This frees up cash flow and means low-risk imports can move across the border faster. I'm advised that further options for online services are being developed with the aim of being rolled out for clients later this year.
That answer was excessively long, so I'm sure the next one will be a compensate.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. What feedback related to technology improvements has been received by Customs that she's aware of?
Mr Speaker, I've been advised that the digital advances made by Customs are being positively received and providing improved efficiencies for both Customs operational needs as well as public using these services. Further stakeholders that Customs work with, such as airlines and fast freight and custom brokers, are all enthusiastic about the agency's development of digital services.
Question 3, the Honourable Carmel Sepuloni.
Mr Speaker, to the Prime Minister, does he stand by all his government's statements and actions?
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Yes.
Mr Speaker, why did the government approve the purchase of $575,000 worth of vaping products from RELX, a company accused of bribing the New Zealand government?
As that member was just told, the date of that so-called phone call was to a government that she was a member of with the help of the Greens in 2023. So any implication of a bribery comes straight back to her own back door. Now, having dismissed that, because I don't believe it did happen in that way, and I think it's a typical Green fiction, the reality is that the product works, and all evidence says so. It says so in other countries, and we're in the first 3 in the world in reducing cigarette smoking. And we should salute that because we're ahead of our target now.
Point of order, the Honourable Chair McAnulty.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I think it is important, as I've raised a number of times, when the Deputy Prime Minister is answering on behalf of the Prime Minister, that he makes that clear. It makes it difficult for the opposition subsequently to hold the Prime Minister to account on comments that were made on his behalf when it's so easily dismissed as "I didn't say that." There is a requirement in Speaker's rulings that ministers answering on behalf of others make that clear before they answer.
Thank you. Another supplementary?
Can he confirm whether any minister or official was aware of the bribery allegations against RELX before the procurement of these vaping products?
We most definitely cannot confirm that because we weren't in government at the time she was.
Mr Speaker, was a formal tender process followed for selecting a vaping supplier at Health New Zealand?
Could we say it again?
Ask the question.
Was a formal tender process followed for selecting a vaping supplier at Health New Zealand?
The Minister in charge has had a review today, and has given that answer to the prior question in this House already.
Does he believe it is appropriate for Health New Zealand to use taxpayer money to purchase products from a company with a documented history of regulatory breaches?
Well, again, if that is the case, then that Minister and her colleagues owes us an explanation as to how they began the process in the first place.
Mr. Speaker, can he confirm whether any minister, official or government agency has had undisclosed meetings, correspondence or lobbying interactions with RELX or its representatives?
I have to tell that member that many of us on this side have never heard of that company before today, and for such an inquiry to be answered, we would need to have it on notice so we can go out and find out and give you an honest answer in this House. Bear this in mind, though, that the survey that began this process was done when she was in government in 2021, and it said that the evidence says that smoking goes down as the less harmful vaping goes up. She got that information and she was acting on it then. Why the change in policy from the opposition now?
Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister rule out that any government officials, ministers or parties in this government receive direct or indirect benefits from RELX or its affiliates in relation to that purchase? If not, why not?
I am very grateful, as it turns out, for the Greens' disclosure today, because the year 2023 says that everything about this question relates to their time in office, and so we can't account just for our side without finding out about her side. So perhaps we can come back next week and answer the question, having made full inquiries of the Labour Party and the Green Party.
Mr. Speaker, does he have confidence in Associate Minister of Health Casey Costello's handling of this procurement process, given the lack of transparency and due diligence?
Sometimes, you can give an answer, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. The answer is profoundly in her own court. This began in 2023 when they were responsible. They started the process, and all of a sudden now, all sorts of allegations falsely made and probably taken up by a very compliant media as part and parcel of the future history of this matter. But none of it will be true. Yes, I do have confidence in the Minister, total confidence in the Minister, because she's got an impeccable record on matters like that as a former policewoman.
Mr. Speaker, will he commit to an independent public inquiry into the influence of the tobacco and vaping industry on its smoke-free policies? If not, why not?
I'd barely be able to explain why we're going to have an inquiry when the tobacco companies are screaming blue murder that they've been treated unfairly. Can't that member get through her head what's actually happened here? You've got the insinuation and the facts are 1,000 miles away from them.
Question number 4, Mike Buttrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Transport and asks, what reaction has he seen to the announcement yesterday that the previous government speed limit reductions are being reversed by 1 July 2025?
Oh, Mr. Speaker, there's been a fantastic response due to yesterday's announcement around the reversal of the untargeted blanket speed limit reductions. For example, Transporting New Zealand saying they're pleased to see the program of speed limit reversals getting underway. Changes will reduce journey times and help avoid dangerous behaviour by frustrated drivers. It was good to see Masterton Mayor Gary Caffell, his worship, told Morning the 3-minute saving journey time meant a lot for transport firms, ambulances and emergency services like the fire brigade.
Supplementary. What feedback has he seen regarding the economic growth potential of this announcement?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are very focused in this government on speeding up economic growth, and these measures will make a difference Time savings make a difference across the country when it comes to making it easier to get from A to B. Transport in New Zealand said their members have been frustrated by blanket speed restrictions. The impact of increased journey times and increased freight costs were not adequately considered. New Zealand couriers said that speed limits are an issue for couriers. The answer to unlocking growth in this economy is not one silver bullet policy. It's hundreds of different actions like this one taken across government to speed New Zealand economies up.
Supplementary. Has he seen any feedback from Wairarapa locals about the speed limit reversal on State Highway 2?
Well, Mr Speaker, it was interesting on Wednesday in Featherston. We stopped in for a quick cup of coffee on the way back over the hill to acclaim from locals about the reversal of State Highway 2. I quote Pat Fairhall, who told media he travels in it a lot. The previous reduction had made the journey very slow. With a central barrier in place, it was possible to drive safely at higher speeds. Angus Stokes told Wairarapa told media it was a good change. It'll help speed things up with traffic and stuff like that. The Mayor of South Wairarapa said, about time, very concise and very correct. And I have seen the views of another Wairarapa resident who told media yesterday he was pleased to see the speed limits go up and had in fact tried himself to get the limits changed, and he was very annoyed at the New Zealand Transport Agency. But a change of government has put that situation right, and I'm pleased to make sure that Kerry McAnulty's day was made on Wednesday.
Supplementary. Supplementary.
Point of order.
That was wholly...
Just let me just pause you. Point of order, Dr Duncan Webb to be heard in silence.
I did pause because I was hoping you'd intervene, but there was a wholly gratuitous attack on a member using a patsy question.
It was good-natured.
One of the things that's been very interesting in the last few days is the heightened sensitivity that some people have to various, comments that have been made in the House. I've looked through standing orders, I've looked through the Speaker's rulings, I've found 10 that could touch on this, but none of them anticipate the degree of sensitivity that appears to be there at the present time. So I will be inviting the Standing Orders Committee to look at that in due course, but I think it's very hard to say that if someone stands to congratulate another member on something they've said, that somehow that's having a go at them. The public simply would not understand that, and I think it also makes this Parliament less than the place of free speech and expression that it should be. So thank you for your concern, but we'll move on. Mike Buttrick.
What are the next steps in the reversal of the last government's blanket speed limit reductions?
Oh, Mr Speaker, the Land Transport Rule setting of speed limits 2024 requires NZTA and councils to reverse the speed limits lowered since January 2020 on several categories of road by the 1st of July 2025. 38 speed limits on state highways are being reversed to their previous higher speed limit, and there's further consultation on a further 49. I encourage New Zealanders to participate in this consultation.
Question 5, Laura McClure.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Internal Affairs, what recent reports has she seen about the processing of citizenship applications?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Brooke Van Velden.
The Department of Internal Affairs processed 54% more citizenship applications in December 2024 than were completed in December the year prior. 5,661 individual citizenship applications were completed last month, more than any other month in 2024. I've asked the Department to focus on improving outcomes for new New Zealanders, and I'm pleased to see progress being made.
Supplementary. What does this mean for the backlog of citizenship applications?
The number of work-in-progress applications is consistently decreasing from 28,544 when I took office in November 2023 to 18,749 as of last month, a drop of 34%. The oldest applications being picked up for processing are now from late March 2024.
Supplementary. How has this improvement been made?
Increasing the efficiency of the Department of Internal Affairs and improving the delivery of core services is one of my key priorities as Minister. The Department has been working to cross-skill their staff across citizenship, passport and digital identity or Real Me applications to better respond to fluctuations in demand.
Supplementary. What communication have you had from the public about citizenship wait times?
I have heard from many people who are applying for citizenship about the impact that long wait times have on them and their families. I know this can be tough on those who have lived and worked in New Zealand for many years and want to take that next step of becoming a New Zealand citizen. I'm pleased to see progress in reducing the backlog in citizenship applications, and I will remain focused on improving outcomes in this area. Congratulations to all New Zealanders.
Question number 6, the Honourable Dr Megan Woods.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question to the Minister of Finance. When did she ask for advice on the purpose and performance of state-owned enterprises, and what does she intend to do with any assets she deems to be underperforming?
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
On behalf of, Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, ministers in this government regularly seek information on the performance of government entities. This is so we can drive better performance, meaning better services for New Zealanders and potentially higher dividends. When the government took office in November 2023, Treasury proactively advised in its briefing to incoming shareholding and responsible ministers that ministers should consider being clearer about the purpose of the Crown's ownership of several government-owned companies. Treasury noted that, quote, OECD guidelines recommend that countries also set out an ownership policy statement, and many OECD countries do so, end quote. That BIM has been released publicly. Shareholding ministers accepted Treasury's suggestion and agreed to receive advice on the issue. In answer to the second part of the question, if an entity is underperforming, then ministers would look to improve its performance.
Supplementary question. Did she inform the wider Cabinet that she had initiated this work?
We don't talk about what happens in Cabinet, but it is certainly true that other ministers, in addition to the Minister of Finance, such as the Minister for SOEs and other Associate Ministers of Finance, have been, in some cases, receiving advice on that.
Supplementary question. Were all her Associate Ministers of Finance receiving this advice?
On behalf of the Minister of Finance, I couldn't honestly give the member an answer that I was sure was accurate because I'm not the Minister of Finance. But on behalf of the Minister, what I can say is that the Minister for SOEs has received advice alongside the Minister of Finance, because in most cases the Minister for SOEs is a shareholding minister in some government companies, as the member will know from her own time, and Associate Ministers of Finance have received papers.
Supplementary question. Does she agree with Treasury, who said yesterday Crown entities account for half the government deficit, and does she consider the sale of those entities could improve the deficit?
Well, it is definitely true to say that improving the performance of Crown entities would make a material difference to the government books, and that is why one of the reasons why ministers have agreed to receive advice, as advised by the Treasury, on ownership policy statements. In relation to Crown entities and the Crown books, ACC, for example, is a large driver. However, it is not government policy to sell ACC. It is government policy to improve its performance.
Supplementary question. Does the contribution to the deficit play a role in her consideration of whether the government is doing a good job in managing them?
No. What drives the government's interest is improving the financial situation of the country and improving the living standards for all New Zealanders. The Crown owns a significant number of assets and companies. Ministers are keen to drive improved financial performance of those companies and those assets. That is one of the reasons why ministers have received advice on ownership policy statements. And I note that those countries well known as Friedmanite monetarist bastions like France, Germany, Korea, Norway and Sweden have ownership policy statements for their government assets.
Supplementary question. Does she consider it is good value for money to run down state assets, sell them to the private sector and then repurchase them at a later date at an inflated price?
Very good question. You've done it before.
there's a number of, there's about 3 or 4 hypothetical statements within that, and that is, none of those things are government policy.
Question number 7, Hana Rāwhiti Maipe Clark.
Tēnā rā koe te whika. My question is to the Minister for Māori Crown Relations, Te Arawhiti. Does he agree with the Prime Minister that Crown-Māori relations are, quote, probably worse, end quote, under the coalition government?
The Honourable Tama Pōtaka.
I te ao I te pō e tika ana te kōrero a te Premier. Tēnei āhuatanga te kāwanatanga, pērā I ngā pāti o tēnei whare me ngā meme pāremata. He wā ka taimai, he wā ka hoki ki te kāinga. Engari me toi tū te tiriti ki te ake. Tēnei āhuatanga, te hononga I wainganui te karauna me ngā iwi Māori, ngā hapu Māori, he wā ka piki, he wā ka heke. E enei rā tata nei, kua kite hoki te pāheketanga e pāna ki ngā ki te pire mātā pono tiriti. Engari ata rānei, ka kite hoki tōna whakarewanga e ngā mahi e pāna ki te pire whakatupua, ara tai atu ki te whakahautanga o te Māori Purposes Bill.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. Does he agree with the statement that, quote, iwi Māori and te tiriti... does he agree with his statement that, quote, te iwi Māori and te tiriti are fundamental to the country's past, present and future, end quote? If so, why is he supporting the regulatory standards bill which would limit the role of te tiriti o Waitangi in future legislation?
Te maanga o te whare. Ai, tino tautoko ana I aku I kōrero ai. Me te mea nei, tārea te wā, ko rongo hoki ki ngā kōrero a te Premier, tārea te wā, mō tērā pire, ka kite hoki I tōna whakatinanatanga.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Did he advocate for the inclusion of Māori issues in the Prime Minister's statement, considering that the Prime Minister has admitted that the Māori-Crown relationship is worse under his government?
Te maanga o te whare. The content of the Prime Minister's speeches are for the Prime Minister, not for Tama Pōtaka.
Question number 6, the Honourable Kieran McAnulty. Question number 8, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Associate Minister of Housing, does he stand by his answer to oral question number 9 yesterday that, quote, those people who have a genuine need for a short-term stay in temporary accommodation, known as emergency housing, have a pathway to do that, end quote. If not, why not?
The Honourable Tama Pōtaka.
Te maanga o te whare ki te Aotearoa oku tupuna. Ana, ki te nuinga o ngā taone nui Aotearoa. Supplementary. How does he reconcile that with numerous frontline providers telling him at the Community Housing Aotearoa Conference 2024 that the policy changes he brought in are stopping those with genuine need getting into emergency housing? E te maanga o te whare. We have been very clear about the process through which the assessment of genuine need is undertaken, and we're very confident that the officials are undertaking that process in a pono and tika manner.
Supplementary. How does the young mother and her 4-month-old in Tauranga, who were told she can't apply for emergency housing and is now living in a tent, not have genuine need?
It's a maanga o te whare. In relation to that particular example, without further information, it's very hard to respond fully. And I'm sure that is a matter that should be dealt with at an operational end, and I encourage that to be followed up.
Supplementary. How does the man in Christchurch who was discharged from hospital, denied emergency housing and readmitted to hospital after complications from sleeping in his car not have genuine need?
Mr. Speaker, again, that's a very specific example, and without further context, it's very difficult to respond to that. But those with genuine need for short-term stay and temporary accommodation, and most cities and towns have a pathway to do that. And with that, as this House knows, as this House understands, there is a responsibilities framework in place.
Let me make it very clear that the complaints that have been around about various comments made in the House have all come from interjections across the House and then responses to them. Interjections should be rare and reasonable. It's the one thing that standing orders and speakers' rulings are quite firm on. And so I'm reaffirming that. Please refrain from the sort of barrage that was coming from one sector of the opposition during that last question.
Supplementary. How does the mother and her children in the Wellington region, who despite having fled domestic violence and are now sleeping rough, were still prevented from applying for emergency housing, not have genuine need?
Again, Mr. Speaker, what I want to reiterate is that there are a lot of New Zealanders doing it really tough, particularly with the cost of living and the economic recession that we've inherited. But our teams and our officials will continue to work very hard, closely with people in difficult situations to ensure that they have the appropriate support, whether or not that's in emergency housing or transitional housing or elsewhere.
Supplementary.
Yep, but I just want to state again that I'm not going to listen to that sort of general attempt to drown out anybody answering a question. Questions are asked in silence. They should be listened to respectfully.
Thank you, sir. How many examples will it take for the Minister to admit that there are fewer people in emergency housing not because the need has reduced, but because he has stopped those in genuine need accessing emergency housing?
E te maunga o te whare. As we're aware, all aware, we are very proud of the steps that we've taken to ensure that there's a reduction in the numbers of people living in emergency housing from over 7,000 people in December 23 to 1,131 at the end of December 24. Now, we understand that there are some people doing it very tough, and we have ensured that there is a reset to deliver better public services in emergency housing. Those examples that the member has given, we encourage him to work with those people to encourage them to work with our officials to ensure the appropriate support.
Okay. Well, that might be something. Excuse me. You might be wanting to say those things, and you're entitled to say them, but at the right time and in the right context. So I would ask once again that people refrain from that, what effectively is a form of heckling. I've been very liberal on it, but quite clearly the reaction to the last 2 days means that can no longer continue. So I'm just sounding fair warning that sort of response is not going to be permitted moving forward. Question 9, Suze Redmayne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Social Development and Employment. What recent reports has she seen on employment in New Zealand?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Louise Upston.
Stats New Zealand's monthly employment indicator released this week showed the number of filled jobs increased on a seasonally adjusted basis in December. This was the second month in a row of job growth, with more than 7,000 jobs added to the New Zealand economy during November and December. And it was encouraging to see the jobs picking up again were in areas linked to international tourism, such as transport, hospitality and recreational services. This followed MSD's latest quarterly benefit stats, which showed more than 33,000 people cancelled their job seeker benefit because they found work in the second half of 2024, which is a 22% increase on the same 6 months in 2023.
How many more people on benefit of the supplementary?
When the House is quiet, the question can be asked.
What does the government take from these numbers?
While it's a difficult time for those who are looking for work, we are cautiously optimistic that the labour market is on the verge of a revival, following years of low growth and rising unemployment that began in 2022. It is encouraging that our unemployment rate is sitting around the OECD average at about 5%. It is clear that New Zealand are still feeling the effect of years of wasteful government spending that fuelled high interest rates. But they can take comfort, Mr. Speaker, that our government's efforts to grow the economy, create more jobs and reduce the number of people relying on job seeker benefits is having a positive impact.
Supplementary.
We're waiting for the member to be quiet.
Why is reducing the number of people on job seeker benefits important?
Because our government understands that we cannot afford to have 12% of our working age population relying on welfare. If we want to live in a country with rising incomes and more job opportunities, that we need to get back to valuing work and self-responsibility. Under the last government, the forecast for how long someone under the age of 25 would be on a benefit over their lifetime blew out to over 20 years. More than 20 years. If we don't act now, too many of our children will spend the bulk of their working lives on welfare, while the rest grow up contributing more and more of their earnings to support them.
Question number 10, Kaharangi Kata.
Supplementary.
Well, you've got to be fast out of the blocks. But, OK, I'll allow it, but we'll get a short answer, I hope, because the last one was quite...
What are the government's plans to support more people on welfare into work?
Mr. Speaker, our Welfare That Works reforms have already reset the benefit system, putting a greater focus on accountability and supporting people with the steps they need. This year, we will introduce even more changes designed to keep beneficiaries seeking employment, including new non-financial sanctions to keep beneficiaries taking reasonable steps to enter the workforce, and granting job seeker support for 6 months at a time. We're gearing up the welfare system to make the most of the forecast improvement in economic growth by providing MSD with the tools and focus to reduce benefit dependency and support more people into work.
Kaharangi Kata, question 10.
Thank you. To the Minister for Disability Issues, does she accept that she has ministerial responsibility for advocating on disability issues?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Louise Upson.
Yes. That is why we've provided a record $1.1 billion funding boost to disability support services in Budget 2024. It's also why we took immediate action to stabilise the disability support system. Our government is determined to build a fair, sustainable, high-quality disability support system that delivers better outcomes for disabled people and their families.
Supplementary. Has she advocated for disability issues to ensure that our core democratic processes, such as select committees, are accessible to all New Zealanders? And if not, why not?
Mr. Speaker, I recognise that for disabled New Zealanders there are significant challenges across accessing places of work, of visits, and including our Parliament. And I know that speakers in previous years have provided greater access for New Zealanders with disabilities to participate in our democratic process.
Supplementary. Has she advocated for disability issues to ensure that the government's no-cause eviction policy coming into effect today does not harm disabled people? If not, why not?
Mr. Speaker, there are a number of issues that are brought to the attention of Whaikaha, and we are building a work program at the moment to ensure that disabled New Zealanders have greater access to employment, to transport, to housing, and a wide range of other areas.
Supplementary. Did she advocate for disability issues when she brought in new benefit sanctions that will push more disabled people into unsuitable work and require disabled people on job seeker to reapply for their benefit twice as often? And if not, why not?
Mr. Speaker, I can absolutely say that the Minister of Disability Issues proudly advocates with the Minister of Social Development and Employment, and they very much share the overwhelming desire to see more New Zealanders in employment, including disabled New Zealanders, I don't have any lower expectation that disabled people shouldn't be in work.
Supplementary. Did she advocate for the 80% of young people who will be eligible for being sent to a boot camp who have a mental illness or disability? If not, why not?
Mr Speaker, as I said, our government is really proud about the fact that we want to see disabled New Zealanders participate and live fulfilling lives in employment, in education, and in housing, and moving about New Zealand in the way they should. Where there are challenges, we see that we will provide equal opportunities for them to get ahead and overcome the challenges they face.
Supplementary. Can she tell the House what she has done to meaningfully engage with the disabled communities, such as responding to correspondence and attending events in her ministerial capacity?
Absolutely, Mr Speaker. I have met with so many disabled people, families, carers over the period of time I've been the Minister, as well as with their organisations, the DPO Coalition, and right now, just on Monday this week, a new consultation has opened on the next recommendations of the review into the disability support services so that we can improve access for disabled people. It opened on Monday. The consultation document is available. I'd encourage that member through her networks to ensure that people who are accessing the disability support service participate in that consultation process.
Question 11, Paulo Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Associate Minister of Housing. What recent announcements has he made about emergency housing?
The Honourable Tama Pota.
He te maunga o te whare. Large-scale long-term use of emergency housing was a social, moral, fiscal catastrophe. We campaigned on ending this cataclysmic situation. When we came into office, we set Target 8 to reduce the number of households in emergency housing motels by 75% by 2030. Blue shoots, Mr Speaker, but this was achieved in 12 months. Furthermore, Mr Speaker, what this meant in reality is a reduction of people living in emergency housing from over 7,000 under the previous government to 1,130 today.
Supplementary. How have you achieved this target?
It's amazing what can be achieved by doing the basics well. First, identify a target number 8. Second, focus on policy primarily ensuring that children aren't growing up in emergency housing, priority 1. Third, invest funding in budget 24 to support the target being delivered and keep households out of emergency housing and support those in emergency housing to get out into more secure housing.
Supplementary.
Just a moment. We'll hear the balance of this question. The answers will be heard in silence. Paulo Garcia.
Where are the people who have left emergency housing going?
Mr Speaker, when we came into government, we knew where there were around 5 out of 10 households where they were going. We now know where over 8 out of 10 households are going once they exit emergency housing. And we also know that over 900 households with nearly 2,000 tamariki have gone into social housing as a result of priority 1. They are no longer contained in dark, dank emergency housing on places like Ulster Street in Hamilton and Fenton Street in Aotearoa. Officials are continuing to improve their insights on this matter.
Supplementary.
Was there some aspect of what I had previously said the member on the end of the front row did not understand?
Supplementary.
Paulo Garcia.
What are your plans now that you've achieved this target?
Mr Speaker, Blue Shoots this mahi has just started and there's a lot more to do. We'll continue to focus on maintaining performance against the target, keep actively monitoring and reporting on the target to ensure that these gains are sustained. I'm proud of the start we've made to get people out of emergency housing, but there's a lot more mahi to do, particularly with those that continue to live in very difficult situations. Kia ora.
Question 12. The Honourable Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Immigration. Did she direct her officials to ensure that Pacific Labour sending countries were consulted before the changes to the recognised seasonal employer scheme were announced in August last year?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
On behalf of the Minister, from my recollection of conversations at the time, I directed my officials to ensure that the Pacific RSE countries were advised of the changes before they were publicly announced. Due to a miscommunication between officials, this did not happen. An apology for this was communicated to representatives of the relevant countries. Our relationship with our Pacific partners is a significant and important one, and it was not acceptable they found out about the changes through the media. I have been clear with my immigration officials that we need to ensure this does not occur with regard to any future changes to the scheme.
How is informing Pacific governments of a decision that is already made consultation and not just a heads up?
Well, it is a good question, but here's a good answer. On behalf of the Minister, I am advised that in 2023, the previous government advised Pacific RSE countries 1 hour before the announcement was made. I am further advised that in 2021, the previous government did not consult Pacific countries at all before the announcements were made.
Supplementary.
Point of order, the Honourable Kira McAnulty.
Taking into account your guidance to the House previously, that was a straight question, and the answer had nothing to do with what this government had done, not mentioned once. The answer was simply about what that minister viewed the previous government to do. Now, I'm not coming at this, as you may see, as a sensitive position. This isn't compliant with what's required.
Excuse me. Someone will leave the House if there's an outburst during a point of order.
My point as its most basic form, sir, is that question was not addressed.
Well, I think if you were to have a look at, I think it is Speaker's Ruling 184, you might find that it's not unreasonable for someone to answer a question in relation to previous government actions, particularly if it's relating to a question about their action in the same area. Is there another supplementary?
There is. Does she accept that the failure to consult on policies that reduce the benefits Pacific countries get from the recognised seasonal employer scheme risks damaging our relationship with our Pacific partners?
I don't think it risks damaging the relationship, but it is definitely, on behalf of the Minister, it is definitely true that Pacific RSE countries should have been informed of Cabinet's decision. That did not take place. An apology for this has been communicated to representatives of the relevant countries. As I said in my primary answer, our relationship with the Pacific is very important.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
In terms of consultation, can the Minister confirm that despite that Foreign Affairs was in constant contact with the relevant Pacific Island countries in 2024 and on the issue of the regional seasonal employment scheme, something started by you-know-who in 2007, and so in that context they were being brought up to debate all the time. Oh, just one thing, having never heard from anybody from Foreign Affairs in the 3 years before that.
On behalf of the Minister, I think the member asking the question knows more about foreign affairs than I do, so I will take his word for it. But it is definitely true to say that the Minister of Foreign Affairs has been an extremely active foreign minister in the Pacific, rebuilding those very important international relationships.
Was the failure to consult Pacific governments before the announcement the fault of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, as she told the Select Committee yesterday?
On behalf of the Minister, collectively across government, officials did not do what the Minister made. Ministry officials across government did not do as the Minister made clear. However, I would contrast the regrettable situation that happened in relation to 2024 with the actions of the previous government on 2 occasions, when once they were never told at all, and the other time they found out an hour before.
On what date did she direct her officials to ensure that there was consultation with Pacific governments on cutting the pay of RSE workers?
On behalf of the Minister, I don't have the specific day and time. If the member wants to know that, he can put it down in a written question. The decision was announced in August last year, so interpolating from the facts as I understand it, it would have been around that time.
Point of order, the Honourable Kira McAnulty.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I took your advice and looked up the Speaker's ruling that you mentioned. I think there might be a misunderstanding. That's about questions to chairpersons of Select Committee. Could you clarify which one you'd like me to look at, please?
No, that is the one. The distinction between a chairperson and a Select Committee the actual point is that they were Speaker's rulings from both Speaker Smith and Speaker Mallard, and they are the rulings. If a government cannot be constrained from mentioning matters to do with the previous government if it relates to questioning that they're currently undertaking.
That's fine,
and
sir.
if that's a new ruling, it's a new ruling, but that's the way I see it.
I just wanted to know which one you're referring to, that's all.
That brings to an end oral questions. We move now to the government order of the day.
Adjourn debate on the Prime Minister's statement and the amendment proposed to it.
I might just take a short pause while those who have to leave the House are able to do so rapidly, quietly and without discussion. Call on the Honourable Tama Potaka.
Tēnā tātou e hui nei me ngā tātara kihi o tō tātou ātanga kohatu, maunga Taranaki maunga tēnā koutou, te kake mai mo tēnei rā whakahirahira. Te hunga ngaro, haere atu rā, ka piti kia tātou e hui tahi nei. 12 months ago, the Prime Minister delivered his first State of the Nation speech and asserted Aotearoa New Zealand is the best country on this side of Papatuanuku, planet Earth and any other planet for that matter. When he wakes in the morning, he's thinking about the country we are going to create for our own tamariki and moko to live in. We won't shy away from the challenges that have arisen like rain clouds hung over a storm that hung over our incoming government. Rampant inflation, out of control interest rates were at the highest level in more than a decade, putting more pressure on whānau throughout the country. But the Prime Minister made it clear that we will be making tough choices. Tough choices would be made to set us on a path of economic growth to improve the lives of Māori and indeed all New Zealanders. We won't wait 16 years, and we've started to deliver some progress well within 16 months. Growth forecast to reach over 2% in 2025. Business and consumer confidence rising with average mortgage interest rates falling for the first time in over 3 years. Whānau seeing key reforms in housing, infrastructure, health and safety laws and planning rules that will drive productivity and empower local businesses. It's primarily through strong economic growth that we will need to lift incomes, deliver quality public services and improve equality of opportunity and equal citizenship for Māori, many of whom cohorts of Māori have disproportionate challenges with health, housing and education. National-led governments in the past have worked very hard to deliver better outcomes for Māori and all New Zealanders and on treaty issues. We started the process 30 years ago with the historic Tainui settlement in Waikato and have negotiated many settlements since then. We need to crack on and deliver more of those. In the last year, we have advanced with the stewardship of Minister Metakota Goldsmith 8 treaty settlements, and I look forward soon to delivering the Ōrākau Bill, which will return the land to the tipuna and iwi at Ōrākau and those that fought there. Completing treaty settlements is a priority for this kāwanatanga. They are critical to help facilitate the future prosperity of iwi, hapu and all New Zealanders, and as you can see in Waikato in particular, Kirikiriroa, the amazing work that Waikato Tainui have been doing not only to support the growth, health, wealth and well-being of their own people, but also of the entire region and the entire country. Amazing potential. But think about this. It is reported that the economic delta, the difference of the Māori dimensions of the New Zealand economy compared to the rest of the New Zealand economy is around 60% on both a revenue per capita indicator and an asset per capita indicator. If we get to equality of opportunity, that amounts to nearly a $40 billion gap in revenue and nearly a $140 billion gap in asset gap. Narrowing this delta, this economic delta, in our view, will contribute significantly to Māori household incomes and the productivity of iwi and Māori assets, and to tax revenue, reduce spending on welfare and social services. We aim to facilitate better conditions for Māori economic growth, using levers that align with improving GDP per capita and reducing legislative and regulatory burdens. Places like Māori land, improving the legislation, facilitating change there and helping with better productivity. Effectively engaging with more iwi and Māori organisations and businesses who seek to make a massive contribution to the infrastructure reimagination in New Zealand, and of course the productivity of iwi and Māori owned businesses, particularly in high export markets. We are on the right path to supporting growth, as we know over 20 significant iwi or Māori-led partner projects in the fast-track process, spanning a variety of industries that will help rebuild the economy, boost renewable energy, grow infrastructure, develop aquaculture and mining, and build homes to fix the housing crisis, like the Beachlands South development, which many of the whanaunga iwi who are here today are invested in out on the coast from Clevedon, like the Muri Whenua aquaculture project up into Tai Tukaro, involving many of the Te Hiku area iwi, the Kāti Waiwai housing project in Aotearoa, and the Ngaitahu industrial land development in Christchurch, all part of the fast-track process. We seek to facilitate better conditions for boosting that economic growth, and will fire up Aotearoa, New Zealand, to be a advanced nation with greater equality of opportunity. We will not achieve that if we don't support Māori economic growth in a prudent, reasonable and absolutely passionate manner. We're going to cut through red tape, make it easier to hire, expand or launch new ventures. And I've got Minister Bailey, who's really focused on doing that in the Companies Act. We're also seeking to grow partnerships in the housing space, and recently announced $82 million in addition for housing projects across the motu, some of whom are led by very close whanaunga of ours. For example, the whanaunga brother of the member for Te Tai Rāwhiti, Patrick Tanaire, and George Reedy on the East Coast doing some housing down at Kaiti. Kia ora. Thank you. Look forward to our Going for Housing Growth plan will see affordable homes to be built, planning rules simplified and major projects fast-tracked. We also know that a lot of whānau continue to do it very tough under the cost of living crisis we've inherited. And Māori are disproportionately affected by that. It's our responsibility as the government, as representatives of regions and people throughout this country, to grow equality of opportunity and equal citizenship for whānau and for Māori. This year we'll continue to implement a social investment approach under the wise guidance of the Minister Willis, the Manu Putia, to drive better results for government's investment in social services and improving outcomes for whānau. Growing equality of opportunity means working harder to break cycles of disadvantage. More hard evidence, more power in the hands of communities, and a much clearer focus on outcomes for money spent. It means taking a harder look at education and employment and committing ourselves to targets, to ambitious targets, to do better. For example, we know that many of our young people, our tamariki, find it hard to go to school. The attendance rate, 40% of tamariki Māori didn't make it regularly to school last year. But we do know that in some instances, in some examples, like Te Wharekura o Kirikiriroa in Hamilton, they have an amazing attendance rate, over 80% regular. This is in a decile 1 school over on Enderley near 5 Crossroads. Phenomenal. We also know when we came to office, thousands of whānau members were living in dank, dark emergency housing, and we've worked very hard to ensure that tamariki and mokapuna come out of that housing, particularly those that have been there for 12 weeks or more. So we've seen, after making decisions and really focusing ourselves on action, nearly 3,000 tamariki have come out of emergency housing in the last 12 months. I think that's progress. That's what I think. Others, they just like to make catcalls and criticisms, but I think that's progress. Growing equality of opportunity, we need to support our mahita, our kaiako and kura, and we've done that by helping with introducing a clearer curriculum, a better approach to structured literacy and numeracy under the Manu Mātauranga Erica Stanford, smarter assessment and reporting, and improved teacher training. This has been rolled out in phases, of course, starting in term 1 this year. Schools in kura must teach or will teach the updated English and Te Reo Rangatira curriculum grounded in evidence-based structured literacy. These are our future rangatira, and we are here to tautoko them, and I look forward to the reopening, reimagination and restart of Tipene, St Stephen's and Bombay on 6th of February next week, and the mahi that Nathan and Yvette Jury, McLaughlin Jury, have been undertaken over many years with the stewardship of Joe Harawira and others, Awi Riddell, Haere Aotearoa, to ensure that that kura comes back into action. Growing equality of opportunity means that when our tamariki and mokopuna graduate, we've created the right economic conditions for them to gain employment, own a business, earn a decent income and set the course for their lives. Excuse me, Mr Speaker. The challenge, or one of the challenges we face when we talk about the equality of opportunities, equal citizenship, is the social delta that exists between our communities and the rest of New Zealand. What that means for the member from, oh no, I don't think he actually represents a region, but what that means is that there is a difference of around $2.5 to $5 million per annum if we move the income of Māori from here to the average income of the rest of New Zealand. Now that is worth fighting for, because that enables our whānau to make careful choices about the health and well-being, the enterprise, the education and a whole range of other matters. But ensuring that our whānau, our tamariki, our mokopuna engaged in education, whether or not it be mātauranga Māori or some other mātauranga, is very important to narrow that delta. We have potential, actually we've delivered on potential. We only have to go to places like Hamilton. Willie, you're allowed to come here sometimes. We're right in the middle of the Asia Pacific, a liberal democracy with well-established institutions. We're a vibrant, multicultural, multi-iwi nation, actually, and we will build strong on our bicultural foundations. As I said earlier on, toitu te tiriti, kaua I hare te mea, toitu te reo, a tō tātou hoa Willie. Government can't do this alone, and it's actually not just for us. It's actually for everyone to work together in that kotahitanga moment to bring the success of our mahitahi and our kotahitanga under the treaty together. Ngā mihi kia tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Speaker.
The Honourable Willie Jackson.
Oh, you got to clap. You got to clap. Well, Mr Speaker, just mihi ana ki ngā whanaunga tai mai nei tēnei wā, he tēnā no tātou katoa. I suppose a lot of people will be wondering what we're talking about here, Mr Speaker. We're talking about a response to the Prime Minister's speech, and that was all lovely stuff from the Minister of Māori Development. The question I got from us is, why didn't the Prime Minister say one thing about Māori? Like just one thing. He didn't even mention the word Māori. But here we had all this. We had this charismatic, exciting Minister of Māori Development trotting out his boring speech that has been written by his researchers, couldn't get off his notes. But I suppose, Mr Speaker, I was thinking about it and I thought, I'm not going to read my speech today. I'm not going to read my speech today because after hearing that boring speech, I was thinking, why didn't the Prime Minister mention Māori? Well, there you go, Mr Speaker, his Māori MPs. I mean, you know, as everyone knows, I'm not a person to get too personal in the House here, Mr Speaker. But I need to take a little bit of time here because a lot of our people are here and they want to know who's representing them. Who are their representatives in government? So I thought I might just introduce them, Mr Speaker. We have Mr McLeod over there, and I've got to take it easy. I know he's got a few aunties up in the audience there, and I want to congratulate him because he's just been promoted to the chair of Māori Affairs. Well done. And if you can remember to clear your campaign expenses at the next election, you might actually become a minister. But hey, he's a promising individual, $186,000 in debt, but never mind. He replaced my friend. Okay, my apologies.
No, I'm going to stop the member there. Just and remind him of the comment he made earlier in his speech that he doesn't get involved in this sort of personal politics that some of the others do. So I'll hold him to that.
Thank you,
We
Mr.
are
Speaker.
debating, as he said, for this House to understand the Prime Minister's statement, and I want to hear his response to
That's
that.
well, my response to the statement is this. Why didn't the Prime Minister talk about Māori things? What I'm saying today is, well, look at who his Māori MPs are. Now, we're looking over there at Mr McLeod, and he replaced my good friend Dan Bidwell. I mean, he's so promising. So, I think he's one of the best young Māori MPs around. So I want to apologise to Mr Bidwell today, because I think I called him an Italian once and he was a Frenchman. But I know he's got a big future. Shane Retty's not here though, Mr Speaker. He is the most principled of the Māori MPs. That there is no doubt. Because he didn't want to deliver this government's terrible health budget. Underfunding, under-resourcing this country. Shane Retty is one of the best, and I want to mihi to him today. I haven't had a chance to wish him all the very best. But hey, Mr Speaker, there's help on the way, because we have a young brown hope. And he's the new Minister for the South Island, Mr Speaker. He might be able to help you out, Mr Speaker. His name is, what is his name? James Mega. James Mega. No, he's a good man, James. I congratulated him. I was really proud of James, you know. I interviewed him, and I think there's a lot of hope for Māori. I think there's a lot of hope for Māori in the National Party, because when he was interviewed, James was interviewed by a real young, brilliant interviewer. I think his name was Hikurangi Jackson or something. Anyway, he was interviewed by this brilliant young interviewer. And when James was asked, no, he's a great, nobody, you haven't listened. When James was asked, what's it like to be Māori? What's being Māori to you? What does that mean? James' response, Mr Speaker, was, well, I don't know. I don't know, but I'll check in my diary for later on, and I'll work that into my schedule. He's going to go right to the top, Mr Speaker. That boy could be the Prime Minister of the National Party. With that sort of response, there's no doubt he's got a big future in the National Party. But I do wish James Mega, I'm serious, I told him to have a listen in today. He's a good young man, all the best to him. But Mr Speaker, without doubt, the shining star of this National Party is the one and only Tama Pōtaka. There's no doubt about it. The Minister Pōtaka, he's trying his best, but as you heard today, he's about as exciting as a rock, and one day he's gonna have to learn to come off those notes. And I see my old friend Mahara Okaroa here. He knows about this sort of stuff. You need to talk to Mahara. He's got a bit of charisma, a bit of excitement. I think the minister's problem is some of his mates. I was thinking Jamie Tuta, Julian Wilcox, Shay Wilson. Maybe that's the problem, Minister, in terms of what you're doing at the moment. But I just want to wish all these people, all these Māori, all the best. But that's what our people are looking at today. No wonder the Prime Minister didn't mention Māori in his speech. But from a serious perspective, there's one Māori who deserves a mention today, and that is, of course, Mr Pōtaka's very good friend, David Seymour. And Mr Speaker, it is a shame on this Prime Minister and a disgrace in terms of this government that they haven't put him in line. He deserves to be straightened out. I am so proud of our people and all New Zealanders who are coming forward in terms of these treaty submissions. And we have a Prime Minister who doesn't mention the treaty principles in his bill, but all he can say is we're the yes government, we're the yes government. But why doesn't he just put David Seymour in line, Mr Speaker? We think that Seymour's either willfully blind or willfully deaf, because he consistently says, I don't know what they're talking about. Can someone explain it to me? Hundreds, thousands of people are explaining it to him, Mr Speaker. They are saying very clearly, you are trying to break the special relationship that Māori have with the Crown. You are trying to break Article 2 rights. As simple as that. Those are not special rights. Those are not privileged rights. Our people are not privileged. If we were privileged, we wouldn't die 7 years earlier than everyone else. If we were privileged, we wouldn't be 50% of the prison population, Mr Speaker. If we were privileged, we wouldn't be 3 times more unemployed than Pākehā people. This rubbish, this lie about us being a special, privileged people must stop. And it's the Prime Minister's job to get this ACT Party in line. It's the Prime Minister's job to support our people. when 60,000 people plus, might be 80,000, turn up at this Parliament, what is the response from the Prime Minister in his speech? Nothing. Not a word in terms of Māori. Not a word in terms of Māori. Nothing about what Seymour's doing, Mr. Speaker. He is not managing a coalition. That is his responsibility. That is his obligation. And he is Seymour's causing mayhem out there. And I'm proud, Mr. Speaker.
Remember that there are rules about you use the member's full name.
David Seymour, Mr. Speaker. David Seymour. Tama's good friend, Tama Potaka's good friend and relation. There is an obligation, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure you'd concur with me, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, bit of decorum, please. There is an obligation. Now it's getting all touchy and sensitive.
Can I just, before I take the point of order from the Honourable Tama Potaka, just explain to the gallery that the rules are that the gallery can't participate in the debate. So I understand that people will involuntarily laugh at something that's bound to be humorous, but please don't comment back.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. The allegation of a relationship that is completely fallacious should be rescinded.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment.
Okay, all right, okay. Don't really want to upset the Minister. But can I say there is an obligation? I'm coming back to the Prime Minister's speech.
Just withdraw it.
Withdraw. Apologise to? Apologise to my good friend, the Minister. I know he's a sensitive soul. So, Mr. Speaker, I really need just to come back in my last couple of minutes that this Prime Minister's speech is so important, so crucial. So we want some leadership here. We want him to manage the coalition. We want him to manage the ACT Party, who are causing mayhem out there in terms of New Zealanders at the moment. I'm so proud of all our people who are rolling up, who are being very good. Wonderful submissions from people like Ani Makaere. Kiri Tapu Allen this morning did a great submission. Really, really good. Chris Finlayson, right across the spectrum we're getting these wonderful submissions. So get them in line and get your New Zealand First Mates in line, Mr. Speaker. They're causing mayhem right now. They're running a K. They're not causing mayhem, okay?
You know that I don't take a political position. I even consider you a friend, so for goodness sake, don't start.
But we want a Prime Minister to manage and to organise. He calls them the yes, we are the yes party. Yes, well, we know this, Mr. Speaker. It's yes to the tobacco companies, right? It's yes to the lobbyists. Who else is it yes to? It's yes to anything the ACT and New Zealand First Party. But here's the hit to landlords. But most of all, what we've heard lately, it's yes to privatisation. And that's what this Prime Minister has said. And he's saying, oh no, not in this term. We know more than anyone how bad that can go. We will never go down that track, Mr. Speaker, and we need a Prime Minister who will stand up and say no to privatisation, who will support New Zealanders, who will support hard-working Kiwis right across the spectrum, who are in fear of that type of policy. We have seen Rogernomics in Hawera, we've seen it in Pātea, we've seen it in Purirua, we've seen it in Mangere. New Zealanders struggling. We ask the Prime Minister on this day to stand up, not just for Māori, but for all New Zealanders. Now's the time. Labour absolutely opposes this government. Kia ora, Mr. Speaker.
I call on the Honourable Simon Watts.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this debate be now adjourned.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. This debate is set down for resumption next sitting day. Call on Government Order of the Day number 1.
Government Notice of Motion number 1 relating to the nomination of a member to the Representation Commission.
The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
I move that under Section 28(3)(b) of the Electoral Act 1993, for the purposes of determining the boundaries of the Māori electoral districts, this House nominate Derek Tinia Fox of Aotearoa to be appointed as a member of the Representation Commission representing the opposition.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. Call on Government Order of the Day number 2.
Te pere whakatupua mō te kāhui tupua Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill, second reading, third reading.
The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
I move that te piri whakatupua mō te kāhui tupua Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill be now read a second time.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye, to the contrary no. The ayes have it.
Te piri whakatupua mō te kāhui tupua Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill, second reading.
The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. I seek leave of the House, despite the determination of the Business Committee, for it to form a committee of the whole House immediately to consider the tabled amendment in my name, which addresses some technical cross-reference changes, and to debate the bill as one question.
Leave has been sought for that course of action. Is there any objection? There is none. I declare the House in committee for consideration of the bill.
Members, the House is in committee on Te Piri Whakatupua mō Te Kāhui Tupua the Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill. The House has resolved to form a committee of the whole House to consider a tabled amendment in the Minister's name and to debate the bill as one question. The question is that parts 1 to 9, schedules 1 to 5 and clauses 1 and 2 stand part.
Thank you,
Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Madam Chair. The Parliamentary Council Office, through quality assurance processes, identified 7 incorrect cross-references within Te Piri Whakatupua mō Te Kāhui Tupua Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill, for example, where a reference to section 86.3 was intended to be 87.3. The tabled amendment corrects these minor and technical drafting errors.
The question is that the Minister's tabled amendment be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The question is agreed. The question is that parts 1 to 9, schedules 1 to 5 and clauses 1 and 2 as amended stand part. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The question is agreed. I will report this bill with amendment.
The House is resumed.
Mr Speaker, the committee has considered Te Piri Whakatupua mō Te Kāhui Tupua the Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill and reports it with amendment.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. In accordance with the determination of the Business Committee, the bill is set down for third reading immediately. I call the Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Mr Speaker, I present a legislative statement on Te Piri Whakatupua mō Te Kāhui Tupua Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill.
That legislation is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the parliamentary website. The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
I move that Te Piri Whakatupua mō Te Kāhui Tupua Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill be now read a third time. Taranaki Maunga, Taranaki Whenua, Taranaki Tangata, Ngā iwi o Taranaki no mai, haere mai, hei rā tino nui tēnei mō koutou, hei rā tino nui hoki mō Aotearoa, nā koutou te kaha me te manawa nui, nō reira, rorangautira mā, tēnei taku mihi atu kia koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā kātou katoa. Mr Speaker, I begin by acknowledging Ngā iwi o Taranaki today. Tēnā koutou. Today is a historic day for Ngā iwi o Taranaki and Te Kāhui Tupua, and for the people and the communities of the Taranaki region. Taranaki Maunga will have its name restored and the park will be called Te Papakura o Taranaki. I offer a warm welcome to ngā iwi o Taranaki who are here to mark the passing of this bill into law. And it was great to spend time with you this morning on what I thought was a wonderful occasion. I want to start by thanking the many speakers who spoke so eloquently and passionately. Without you, these arrangements would not have been possible. I thank you for the fortitude and patience in reaching this significant milestone, and we join you in remembering the leaders and loved ones who have passed on before they were able to witness today's milestone. Today's remarks mark the final stage in the progression of the Taranaki Maunga arrangements with the Crown. And it's an immense pleasure and a privilege to be standing before you today supporting the bill's enactment. Today it's appropriate to pay special tribute to the tupuna of the 8 iwi of Taranaki for the grievances they have suffered. Ngā iwi o Taranaki negotiators brought the wairua of their tupuna to the negotiating table. And I want to thank the lead negotiator, Jamie Tuta, for his wisdom and leadership in advocating for justice for Te Kāhui Tupua. I also acknowledge Liana Potu, Hemi Sungdran, Marty Davis, Haimona Maruera for the enormous responsibility of negotiating these arrangements with integrity. I also need to acknowledge the tireless work of Tihi and Daisy Noble, who was part of the negotiating team. While Daisy is no longer with us, I have no doubt that her contribution will never be forgotten. I want to thank ngā iwi o Taranaki for your kindness towards officials throughout this process, and given your history with the Crown, officials were honoured to have your trust and understanding these past 9 years. I acknowledge Catherine Gordon for her significant contribution and leadership as Chief Crown Negotiator. I thank my ministerial colleagues for their work and support, and in particular the Minister of Conservation, Tamapotaka, who jointly oversaw the Taranaki Maunga arrangements alongside me. I acknowledge the previous Ministers of Treaty of Waitangi Negotiations and Conservation who have been part of this work, and I see Andrew Little in the House. I also want to thank Te Arawhiti and Department of Conservation officials who worked long hours to develop and finalise arrangements. The bill gives effect to Te Ruruku Putake Orongo, the Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Deed, to recognise the collective cultural redress over Tupuna Maunga or ngā iwi o Taranaki and the national park currently known as Egmont National Park. It's kaitiaki for ngā maunga. The arrangements in the bill are designed to enable ngā iwi o Taranaki to fulfil their intergenerational responsibilities in relation to their tupuna maunga. The mountains of Taranaki are central to the identity of ngā iwi o Taranaki and are special to all New Zealanders, especially to those living in the Taranaki region. The National Park will be renamed Te Papakura o Taranaki, and it will remain within the National Park system. A firm condition for the Crown is that all New Zealanders will be able to continue to visit and enjoy this most magnificent place for generations to come. It's been agreed that access to the mountain will not change. This is the land of Sir Hillary, and many New Zealanders love climbing mountains and enjoying the nurtured beauty of the park. Through the 8 individual settlements for the iwi o Taranaki, the Crown promised that it would return to negotiate collective redress over the maunga. Today, the Crown fulfills this agreement. For generations, Taranaki Maunga and its surrounding ranges have been a central pillar for the iwi, hapu and whānau of Taranaki. The mountain has long been an honoured ancestor, a source of physical, cultural and spiritual sustenance and a final resting place. In 1770, Captain Cook sighted Taranaki Maunga while sailing down the western coast of the North Island. Cook decided to name the mountain Mount Egmont after the Earl of Egmont, who had been a key supporter of Cook's voyages. Cook nor Egmont never made landfall in Taranaki. Since the signing of the treaty in 1840, Crown Acts and omissions have caused ngā iwi o Taranaki significant grievance. Following the establishment of European settlements In the 1840s, the Crown began to purchase land in the Taranaki region, but Māori in Taranaki became concerned when the Crown began acquiring land from individuals or groups, often without the consent or knowledge of key leaders in the wider community. In 1860, the Crown used military forces to complete its purchase of the land in Waitara, which was the spark that led to wars between the Crown and Māori. In 1865, the Crown unfairly punished Māori by confiscating 1.2 million acres of Taranaki land, including the mountain. The Crown's breaches of Te Tiriti mean that an immense and compounding harm had been inflicted upon whānau hau Apu and iwi of Taranaki, causing immeasurable harm over many decades. During the century that followed, the Crown repeatedly ignored the rights and interests of tangata whenua of Taranaki in relation to their ancestral mountain. Following the confiscation, the Crown failed to create most of the reserves it promised. After further protests by Māori in Taranaki, the Crown returned some reserves but refused to include most of the mountains, instead proclaiming them as a forest reserve and later a national park. The Crown then established management regimes which ensured that trampers, skiers, hunters were involved in the park management, but made no such provision for tangata whenua. Traditional Māori practices associated with the mountains were banned, while tourism was promoted. Pests such as possums were introduced and led to destruction of the native forest in some parts. In the early 1870s, Taranaki Māori sought to become involved in the park management, to have the mountain's traditional name reinstated and to have ownership of the mountains returned. Some of the proposals were initially supported by government, then abandoned. Provisions for Māori involvement in the management of the Egmont National Park were eventually enacted in 1977, and in 1978 the Crown promoted legislation which returned Taranaki Maunga to the Taranaki Māori Trust Board, but immediately returned it to the Crown ownership for the purposes of a national park. The gift and the vest-back arrangements that were put in place by the Act were a source of grievance to many Taranaki Māori ever since. To address this, on the effective date of the bill, the Mount Egmont Vesting Act 1978 will also be repealed. Today brings a close to treaty negotiations between the Crown and iwi of Taranaki. I look forward to the future of ngā iwi o Taranaki and the Crown in their roles of upholding and protecting the health and well-being of te kāhui tupua. Ngā iwi o Taranaki, as you entered Parliament today and sitting here in the gallery now, you embody your ancestors, the many generations who have passed on, your people now and into the future, and I thank you for being here today. When enacted, this bill will further empower the efforts of ngā iwi o Taranaki and will mark a new beginning in the relationship between the Crown and the proud and resilient uri of Taranaki. I look forward very much to visiting Taranaki to deliver the Crown's apology in the near future. This is a special day, and it is an opportunity to right the wrongs of going back, as I said in the speech, 250 years to the renaming of the mountain and many, many events in between. And this is a special day, and I want to thank everybody for taking the opportunity to be here. Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable Jenny Anderson.
Tēnā koe e te manga e te whare. Tuia te mano tūpuna e noku roa, tuia te rangi ki runga o Taranaki Maunga. Pai hiritea te moka tangata ki ngā uri o rātou. Mā kua tāhuri atu ki te pō, ka au ki te tātou, katoa e pai nei. Ko te mihi tuatahi ki te atua nana nei ngā mea katoa, ko te mihi tuaroa ki te whare e atu nei. Apati hono tātai hono te hunga mate ki te hunga mate, apati hono tātai hono te hunga ora ki te hunga ora. Tēnā koutou katoa ki ngā iwi o Taranaki, ngā rauru ki tahi, ngā ruahine, Ngāti Maru, Ngāti Mutunga, Ngāti Ruanui, Ngāti Tama, Taranaki iwi, te Aotearoa. Ko tēnei te mihi mahana ki a koutou katoa, nō reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ko Taranaki he pau herenga waka, he pau herenga iwi, he pau herenga kaupapa, koia hoki te puna e heke mai ai te tangata, e kore e memeti te puna ko purupu. Tēnā koutou. I'd like to play some acknowledgements first, and I know that I won't capture anybody, but I'll do my best to recall those. I know personally Jamie Tuta and Liana Poutu, how hard you have worked throughout your lives to bring us to this day. And I know all of those people around you who have supported you and done all of those hours and weeks and months of years of work to bring Taranaki iwi to this point in time. I'd like to acknowledge all of those people here who have come on that journey and those who have passed along the way. I would like to acknowledge the former ministers of Treaty Waitangi negotiations. When I first worked for Margaret Wilson, she was the minister when Taranaki iwi were first entering into negotiations. Mark Burton was then the minister, Christopher Finlayson when National took government, Andrew Little, and then Paul Goldsmith. We've also had ministers of conservation from the Green Party, Eugenie Sage, and also Willow Jean Prime, who was the Minister of Conservation who signed the agreement at Aotearoa and Orwai Marae. They are all part of this journey as well. When I first came to Wellington back in 2002 and got my first job here, it was right in the middle of multiple negotiations happening with Ngā Raru Kitahi, with Ngāti Tama. I was a new policy analyst, and I was so amazed to learn about your history and to sit in meetings and understand some of the wrongs that had gone on in Taranaki, Raupatu in particular. So I'm very proud to be able to be part of this journey and speak today. It's an important day for us. Taranaki Moanga has always been more than just a mountain. It is an ancestor, a protector, a source of strength for the iwi, hapu and Taranaki. It has shaped the identity, the culture and the spiritual well-being of generations before and generations to come. Personally, I'm always amazed at the striking form of Taranaki that rises so sharply, so close to the ocean. I think that's what takes your breath away. And often the clouds sit on its shoulders like a korowai itself. It's a beautiful mountain, and it's a proud part of New Zealand. But its history tells of a deep injustice, and that is what brings us here today. From the 1840s, as European settlement grew in Taranaki, so did the pressure on Māori land. Māori initially engaged with the settler economy, but those concerns quickly arose as the Crown began acquiring land that ignored collective decision-making, ignored local leaders, and ignored the local communities. It often went against the wishes of those who spoke so loudly against what was happening. These tensions came to a head in 1850 when the Crown used military force to seize Waitara, sparking war. And in 1865, the Crown compounded this injustice by confiscating 1.2 million acres of Māori land, including Taranaki Moanga itself. For over a century, the rights of the people of Taranaki were disregarded. Promises were broken. Reserves that were meant to be for Māori were not delivered. And when those reserves were provided, they did not include Taranaki Moanga itself. Instead, the mountain was declared a forest reserve and later a national park without any recognition of tangata whenua who had always cared for it. Māori were locked out of decision-making, traditional practices were banned, and tourism activities that harm the environment were encouraged. Despite these injustices, the people of Taranaki never gave up. From 1970s onwards, there was a strong push to restore the mountain's traditional name and regain ownership and play a role in its management. Personally, I love that sticker that said, who was Egmont anyway? I had one of those. While some progress was made in 1977, legislation allowing Māori involvement in the National Park, and then in 1978, return of the mountain to the Taranaki Māori Trust Board, these steps fell well short of partnership. What this bill does is it creates a legal personality for Taranaki Moanga. Te Kāhui Tupua will be formally recognised in law as a living, indivisible, whole entity that encompasses Taranaki Moanga and its neighbouring peaks, Pouakai and Kaitaki, from summit to surrounding lands, including both their physical, spiritual elements as well. In doing so, Te Kāhui Tupua will also be granted a legal personhood, a recognition that reflects the deep connection iwi have always held with their tupuna maunga. This means Te Kāhui Tupua will have its own legal identity with rights, responsibilities, protections, and acknowledging its status as more than just a landscape. It is an ancestor, a source of life, and a guiding presence for the people of Taranaki. While this new legal status is centred on the national park, it extends well beyond its borders in keeping with the iwi perspective of their mountain. Importantly, this recognises that it does not impact on private land or exchange existing laws outside the park. Instead, it ensures that the mountain and all it represents are safeguarded with the respect and authority it deserves for generations to come. There is an irony here, Mr. Speaker, and I hear the voice of Uncle Willie in my head. I always try to quieten it, but it's quite loud. This is a bill that takes real steps to acknowledge the status of Taranaki iwi as tangata whenua, while we on the Justice Committee sit for hours and hours to hear submissions on the Treaty Principles Bill that takes active steps in an attempt to remove the tangata whenua status of Māori. Some of those ACT party submitters are going to be real cross when they find out their coalition government just gave Taranaki maunga a legal personality. Ngā iwi o Taranaki, you continue to lead the way in reconnecting with your mountain. Through environmental restoration, pest control, revival of Indigenous flora and the integration of mātauranga Māori, you are ensuring that Taranaki maunga is protected for future generations. And I thank you for that. Your resilience and determination remind us all that true justice requires more than recognition. It requires action, partnership, and an unwavering commitment to honouring who you are. I believe the Taranaki maunga collective redress will have benefits wider than just for Taranaki iwi. I believe it will be and build a better future for all New Zealanders for generations to come. Nō reira, he mihi mahana ki a koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Split call, I call Hana Lyndon.
Koe te pika o tira tēnā koutou takurahi o Taranaki. Taranaki he puna wai e kore mimiti, ka koro pupu tonu, ka koro pupu tonu. Koe a mātou ngā mema pāre mata ka tūohu ki muia koutou i tēnei wā. Mere o Māori tonu ahau e te pika, aroha mai. E taku iwi a Taranaki, aroha mai ki tēnei kāwanatanga. Aroha mai ki ngā tūkinotanga, ki runga i a koutou, ki runga i ngā uri, mō ēnei o ngā rautau tonu. Te rongo i te ko atu i te kotahi miriona eka te rahi o ngā whenua kua raupatu i a Taranaki ka aroha. Tangi ana te ngākau mo te whakaaro e pāna ki tēnei maunga tapu, maunga whakahirahira, he mea nā te kāwanatanga i tāhai, i raupatu i a koutou i tēnei rangi, kua whakaturengia kia hoki mai ki a koutou. Nō reira, kia aroha mai ki tēnei whare pāre mata nei, ki ēnei o ngā ture, pōhehe kāwanatanga nei. Engari, ko tai ki te wā kia whakatikangia. Mr. Speaker, I stand before the House and I am heavy in considering the way with which to address this bill, because it's a feat to get to this point. 9 years of negotiations to see the return of the maunga. But I think even greater is the raupatu or the tāhai of our names. Our place names are so important. So when we've had Egmont and now i Naene, haere atu rā Egmont, i Naene hoki mai Taranaki maunga. What is in a name? And we need to consider that as this House, because when we think of Pito One, we think of Kororareka, we think of Te Kamo, places of significance for iwi Māori, a name matters. So this ture honours the people of Taranaki Maunga, ngā iwi e waru, kia whakahokia te ingoa, kia motuhake te ingoa, ki roto i te ture, ki mua i te kāwanatanga, mo te kaunihera, engari mō koutou tonu. And I pay tribute to those who have negotiated and demonstrated such tolerance for the Crown. Such tolerance as you have been patient in negotiating this settlement for the people. And to the ministers, matua anaru iti, tēnā koe, koutou o te kāwanatanga o tēnei wā, tēnā koutou. Tiwi Māori has been very gracious. Tiwi Māori has been very patient with this whare kāwanatanga, kia tika ngā mahi. And today this is about putting things right. This is about putting things right and honouring our ancestors who have lost so much, the landlessness of the people of Taranaki, and finally, kua hoki mai te maunga, kua hoki mai te ingoa, kua whakatūhia tētahi rōpū, hei rōpū whakahaere i tō tātou maunga me ngā whenua katoa, nō reira tēnei rā ka mihi. I'm taking a split call to share time with my cousin Benjamin Doyle, but I cannot stop in thinking about the raupatu. Kei reira tonu, kei mua i te aroaro, ki runga i taku rai tonu. Me tēnei maunga hoki, e tikana me hoki mai. Me hoki mai me te toru te kau mā rima miriona tāra mo te whakahaere. Ai, e tikana. Haere tonu, pauhia te penihene, kia ki te waka, ki te whakahaere I ene o ngā whenua me Taranaki Maunga. E mihi atu ana kia ngā kai whakahaere o tēnei kaupapa o tira ngā iwi katoa. Me taku whakaaro, e pāna kia te awa tupua I te tuatahi, awa tupua me ngā uri o te ure wera. Ko Taranaki Maunga tētahi atu tauira mō mātou o te tai tokerau, mātou, mō te iwi Māori tonu. In considering personification and whakaturingia to put into legislation the recognition of Taranaki Maunga being our tuakana, that is what we are. We are the taina as tangata. And it is recognising the special connection that the iwi of Taranaki have long had, and now the Crown is finally catching up. So while my comments are short, it is an honour, it is an absolute honour to stand here before you, considering the loss, but also what today brings. And a new day of mana whakahaere for the people of Taranaki, me te kāwanatanga, kia tū tonu tātou mo te rangatiratanga, kia tū tonu tātou mo te mana Māori motuhake, me te mihi anō kia koutou ngā iwi o Taranaki, ka eke iho, kia ora.
Benjamin Doyle.
E te manga e tēnā koe, e rere ana te mihi ki te whenua, ko papatua anuku, te mārei kura o tēnei ao. Ki ngā tini atua, tēnā koutou katoa. He mihi mai o hā, he mihi māhana hoki tēnei ki a koutou. Ngā iwi o Taranaki kua tai mai I tēnei rā. Ka tuku hoki te mihi ki ngā tini mate kua haere tonu ki te tua o te ārai, ki te pō, ki te oki o ki ngā I o tātou tupuna. Haere, haere, haere atu rā. Ki a koe hoki, Mount Egmont, haere tonu atu. Nau mai, he tika atu kia hoki mai koe, maunga, Taranaki Maunga. E te tuākana, ki te māhau o Ōteina. He manawa piharau. E ngā mana whenua, ko ngā rauru ki tahi, ko te āti awa, ko ngāti mutunga, ko ngāti tama, ko ngāti maru, ko ngā ruahine, ko ngāti rua nui, koutou, ko Taranaki iwi. Karanga mai, karanga mai, karanga mai. Taranaki Maunga, you are the never-ending spring that replenishes your people. You will continue to flow. You will continue to flow. E te māngai, we Māori are descendants of Te Taiao. We are mokopuna of ngā maunga. It is our inherent and perpetual link to this cosmological whakapapa, which allows us to connect to our ancestral tūranga waiwai, woven like aho and whenu of the tāniko. Our people are an inseparable element of the environment, the younger siblings or teina of the manu, the ngāhere, ngā uri katoa o tāne mahuta. With humility and respect, we look to our ancestors, our tuakana, for guidance. It is our responsibility to listen to their call and in turn to act as kaitiaki of their domains. Te Pāti Ka Kāriki acknowledges the ecological wisdom of tangata whenua, the original custodians of these lands. We acknowledge you, ngā iwi katoa o Taranaki. We seek every day to honour te tiriti o Waitangi by upholding the tino rangatiratanga of Māori, and will relentlessly pursue a vision of mana orite, equity, as promised in Article 3 of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. For this reason, it is our honour to be here with you all and to tautoko this bill, which goes a small way towards addressing the immense suffering and loss that you have experienced at the hands of the Crown. A name is a taonga, Mr. Speaker, and to have that taonga erased, assimilated and suppressed is an act of deliberate colonial violence. A severance of whakapapa, an attempt to eradicate the very thing that locates and connects us. The Crown sought to name and claim our wāhi tapu, our takiwā, as a strategy of cultural genocide. Returning our ingoa to these lands should not be viewed as a gift, nor is it an act of generosity. It is a simple matter of making right a terrible wrong. He whakatika. E te māngai, e te whare, there will be a day when our mokopuna know only the true names of this land, Aotearoa. There will be a day when the mana me te mauri o ngā maunga me ngā awa are protected, cared for, restored and respected, not as resources to be exploited, but as taonga, as tuakana, as tupuna. E ngā mokopuna o Taranaki maunga, tēnei he mihi aroha nui ki a koutou, he whakawhetai hoki. Hoki mai rā te ingoa pono o Taranaki maunga.
All on, Cameron Luxton. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm privileged to rise and speak on behalf of the ACT Party for this third reading of Te Pere Whakatūpua mō te Kāhui Tūpua Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill, which restores the name Taranaki Maunga back. And I'd just like to quickly say I'm not yet at my 40th year of life, and I can remember at some point in my childhood hearing the arguments in the world about whether Egmont should stay or Mount Taranaki would stay, and to be honest with you, I actually thought that had already happened. So to stand here as someone from the Bay of Plenty, not from Taranaki, who did not partake as strongly with your conversations that have been happening, understanding the hurt and the effort that has been going into getting this ingoa back, fair enough that this is an emotional moment for any of you who feel it, and I wish I'd known sooner that this name hadn't been changed back. To the negotiators who have worked hard on the Crown side and on ngā iwi o te Taranaki, you guys have done a good job here to try and bring sides together, repairing damage that has been around for a long time. Rights have been trampled by the Crown, violent injustice has been given out. The Crown has told lies and damaged its mana, the respect that it claims but perhaps didn't deserve. And these damages may never be repaired. I can, reading through the historical account in the bill about what has happened in Taranaki is something that New Zealanders are learning about, but not perhaps enough. And I'd like to also note, Mr. Speaker, that I read with some pleasure in there that this is not a full historical account, because how could you ever take full account of what has happened? The Crown has committed horrendous acts, and this is but a small part. But my colleague Benjamin Doyle raised a good point, that this is not giving the name back. The name was taken. This is restoring a name, and haere atu ki te pō, Edmond. Mr. Speaker, I just, I believe quite strongly in property rights. I think they are a sound, strong way to form a society. And I'm glad to see that in this bill the Minerals Act is going to have some sections ignored, so that the true managers and kaitiaki of Te Maunga will be able to use stones and other resources that have been exempted without having to go to the Crown or to council or anybody to ask for a resource management consent, because people want to be able to use what's special to them for any reason without needing to justify it to somebody else. I think that is a great part of this bill, although a minor part. I don't want to use up a lot of time on this, but I do want to tell a small story. As I say, I'm from the Bay of Plenty, and I'd never actually been to Taranaki before I was elected. And I'm sorry about that, but I have been now, so, and outrageous, right? Outrageous. I have been now, but the closest I've seen was standing on, to be fair, I was there with him, but I was standing on Ruapehu and looking out towards Mount Taranaki and seeing it out there, and oh my goodness, it's glorious from afar, but wow, when I was standing below it, watching the carved, the land where the water has come off the mountain and carved carved channels, so even though it looks flat, there's deep historical markings in the land. The bush that it has, the imposing manner in which the mountain stands above all of Taranaki. I can see why the people of Taranaki are so proud of their maunga, and you should be proud to have this right and responsibility that I'm sure, and I know Te Iwi or Te Taranaki will take seriously to be the kaitiaki of this maunga in this bill. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Call on Jenny Markrock.
E te pika tēnā koe. E ngā iwi o Taranaki, ngā rauru ki tahi, ngā ruahine, Ngāti Maru, Ngāti Mutunga, Ngāti Ruanui, Ngāti Tama, Taranaki iwi, me te Aotearoa, tēnā koutou katoa. E tū ana ahau he uri no te tai tokiro, ki te mihi atu ki a koutou, ka nui aku mihi mai o hā ki a koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ka mihi ahau ki ngā rangatira me ngā māreikura o ngā iwi o Taranaki, tēnā koutou katoa. Ka mihi ahau hoki ki a tātou kua tai mai ki te tautoko te kaupapa o te rangi nei. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Madam Speaker, I'm absolutely humbled and honoured to speak on behalf of New Zealand First in support of Te Pere Whakatūpua mō te Kāhui Tūpua, the Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill. This bill, it recognises the Crown's historic breaches of the treaty in relation to Taranaki Maunga, including the confiscation of 1.2 million acres of Taranaki lands. The National Park, including Taranaki Maunga and the surrounding peaks, will be vested in a legal person named was delisted as a national park to become the first ecosystem in the world to be recognised as having legal personhood. In the same way, they're imbued with rights, powers, duties and liabilities of a legal person. The Wanganui Awa became that first river to be recognised as an indivisible and living being, the first river in the world to be granted legal personhood status. And today, that status is also endowed upon Taranaki Maunga. So today, with the passing of this bill, the highly regarded and treasured lands of Taranaki will be granted legal personhood status. Madam Speaker, many in the House will make comment and run through the narrative of the historic breaches that the Crown has made against Taranaki iwi. But I'd like to not add to that kōrero. I'd like to shift my focus to something that's maybe more uplifting, because we need to put the past in the past once that apology has been made and once the Crown has set a new pathway forward together with the iwi. And when we look at Māori legend, and as a ngāpui growing up in Te Arawa, I learnt many of Te Arawa's legends. So doing a little research for my contribution today, it was great to actually find out more about the legends around Taranaki Maunga. And I think it's a beautiful story of a Maunga in the Central Plateau who fell in love with another mountain, a beautiful female mountain, when he was centred in the centre of the North Island alongside Ruapehu, Tongariro and Ngarohoi. He fell in love with Pihanga, a beautiful mountain covered in forest, and Taranaki fought with Tongariro for Pihanga's favour, but unfortunately defeated, so fled west, and his tears created the Wanganui Awa. He rested, but the Pouakai Range blocked his path and he became petrified and ended up where he sits today. The mountain, the Maunga, is said to cry for Pihanga when covered in rain clouds. The mountain is said to display itself to Pihanga during spectacular sunsets, and I have seen many of those sunsets from my sister's farm. She's on the coast in Pātea, and what a stunning climbed it 100 more times. And I suppose Taranaki Maunga was part of why he managed to summit Everest. He had a famous saying when he summited Everest, "We knocked the bastard off." Well, he did that 100 times with Taranaki Maunga, but it was his quote that I particularly like, which I think is applicable to Taranaki Maunga, and this is what he said. This is what Sir Edmund Hillary said. "It is an act of worship just to sit and look at high mountains." Madam Speaker, I'd just like to also mention, and it would be a remiss of me as a New Zealand First Member not to mention Mātua Shane, and sometimes he does manage to put his putia where his waha is, and he has in fact been with the Provincial Growth Fund making sure that the region of Taranaki got its fair share. So the Taranaki crossing, the enhanced visitor experience on the Maunga, upgrading the tracks, a new bridge, a new visitor hut, and the development of an improved safer visitor centre as part of the Taranaki crossing was because of the Provincial Growth Fund. So he also wanted me to mention that he has put money into upgrading 23 marae in the Taranaki region. And may he long continue to do that. I hope he makes sure that we can get some more putia out there to you from him with the Regional Infrastructure Fund. Madam Speaker, I'd like to conclude where, in a Māori cultural context, we normally begin when we introduce ourselves, and that the first point we make in our pepeha is to name our maunga. Well, my maunga is Whakarongorua, and for those of you here today, you now have your name of your maunga restored. So what a beautiful blessing that is. We use our maunga as we begin our pepeha because it's that connection to the physical and spiritual place that we call home. It represents the most significant and foundational element of our ancestral land. That connection with that physical landscape and our roots within our tribal territory is so important. The maunga is considered that source of life, sustenance and protection. So that is why it's a starting point when we introduce ourselves in the multicultural context. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, I'd like to acknowledge the mana of Taranaki iwi here in the House today. I acknowledge your maunga, Taranaki maunga, your ancestor. And after 9 years of negotiations with the Crown, this phase concludes another chapter. So I hope that from this point you're able to release the pain of the past, to be set free, to imagine a new and better tomorrow for all of Taranaki iwi. I humbly commend this bill to the House.
Dewi Ngārua Peka.
Tēnā koe te pika. Maunga Taranaki e tu mai rā, e tu mai rā. Maunga Taranaki e tu mai rā, e tu mai rā. Pōwiri tiara, pōwiri tiara. Ngā waka, ngā mana, ngā reo ka hui mai nei. Tēnā koutou e te whānau. It reminds me that Hurangi always wondered why Sir Hilary Edmonds scowled our maunga. He would often say, "There's no kai up there." I'm extremely conscious I have the privilege to talk today. I'm extremely conscious I have the privilege as a maunga wāine, as a mokopuna o Taranaki. And there are many voices before me, all of our tupuna who we saw arrive today. And I particularly think of our kui, Moereweroa. I particularly think of Tihi, and of those represented today by the many faces who couldn't be here from Taranaki. So I humbly mihi to you all for your patience and your aroha to being here. I also remember the fact that you got on buses together is actually, Jamie, a sign of unity. So there you go. I also want to mihi to Te Pāti Kakariki who have allowed me an extra 5 minutes to be able to mihi to such an important kaupapa, which is our maunga. I am also conscious of what Ruakire said today. I tēnei rā kua puta a Taranaki I te here. Today, Taranaki is freed from the shackles. It's freed from the shackles of Mururopatu. Today, Taranaki, our maunga tupuna, is released from the shackles of injustice, of ignorance, of hate. Today, we also liberate with our aroha and our de-chaining and de-shackling. We also liberate the rest of Aotearoa in correcting this deep evil past and reminding the governments of today that our taonga are never yours to take or abuse, and that we will always have another generation to continue on the legacy of aroha and peace for all of Aotearoa. The theft of our maunga has been one of the greatest injustices of colonisation, and I know I'm telling you what we already lived and know. I know that we were all raised not only under the breath of our maunga. There is no ear like the ear that our maunga has. There is no whenua like the whenua in Taranaki. And there's no legacy for rights and justice like there is in Taranaki. The tireless fights, petitions, activations, negotiations. There is a resilience, and sadly we are all born highly politicised. There was also recognition in the Taranaki Tribunal reports, which I take every opportunity in this House to mention, the kaupapa tuatahi of Waitangi Tribunal, in which noted what happened to Taranaki Māori in 1860s as being akin to Holocaust. And I say that because there is a deep confusion still in the landscape of Aotearoa of what we are about. Dame Tariana was brave and she mentioned it. I did in my maiden speech. It is not to cause discomfort and hate. It's actually just to remind what this young culture has behind it. We were never privileged to experience this. We were never privileged surviving this mururo patu, and it has taken this place way too long to acknowledge this, and sadly speaks to many ongoing struggles that we see in Aotearoa. The bill doesn't return ownership. Every day of my life, of our tupuna's life, of my mokopuna's life, our maunga looked over us as we lived within a state that chose to control, rename and strip of our wakuapapa. But let me be really, really clear. Our tupuna never ceded sovereignty over our maunga. No raupatu, no act of government, no colonial decree could ever sever our connection with our maunga. We grew up knowing there was nothing anyone could do to make us any less connected. So I'm extremely proud of our negotiators, Jamie Ma, because we are a tough audience to please. Today we affirm what we've always known. Our maunga is and never was a Crown asset. It is our tupuna, living, breathing, embodiment of our identity, our kawa, our tikanga, our wakapapa as Taranaki. And this has always been about our mokopuna. And this is where we want to be, in a place where today in Aotearoa, our mokopuna never have to fight or normalise seeing our taonga and our resources exploited, mined and destroyed for twilight industries. Our mokopuna have the right and interest to be who they are. I want the nation to understand the debates that are going on in Aotearoa are actually about us, being able to remember what we came from and how we simply haven't landed at the same place. We're not victims. We are survivors of mururo patu. And that meant that we arrived at a different time. But do not be mistaken about what it is that's going on within Taranaki. And I want to talk about the next dawn. Because upstairs are some of the most brilliant, innovative, creative, unique, dynamic, motivational, inspirational people I've ever known in the world. And if you think they're great, you should see their mokopuna. What we have up here is a community that, despite and in spite of, has rebuilt not only the economy of Taranaki, but also our belief in ourselves. And I just want to share with you, because I know this is a deeply heavy day, but I want to share how we've lifted, how we live light, how we continue to live in the spirit of tohu and tawhiti. We have rebuilt infrastructure, and Parihaka, an international passive resistance, stands strong and continues to be unique and show what kotahitanga does. Our reo, our whare wānanga, our tārangi, tā Māori pōmare, tārangi Hiroa Buck, Pātea Māori Club, all international kaupapa that continue to teach and educate the world on solutions of unity and kotahitanga. We have housing initiatives that every iwi are doing uniquely. We are our own solutions, living proof. We have taiao kaupapa. They're actively at every submission, and it's not lost on me that ngā iwi o Taranaki we're presenting on Monday against the Treaty Principles Bill, and also here giving aroha to the motu. We have our own educational tautoko. We lead in primary sectors, agriculture, horticulture and fish. PKW, our own iwi initiatives. We have rangatahi delegations that go to Stanford. They come back and they are digital natives. They are some of the most talented, amazing rangatahi. We own and have our own kura kaupapa, ware kura, kohanga reo. Where there's nothing that we didn't lose that we can't rebuild. We are hosting, and this is the most political kaupapa going on in Taranaki at the moment, matatini. Whether we're wearing white or black, I'm wearing red, just so you all know. Ngā pura waihotanga, Aotea Utanganu, we are our own strength. And every day, our rangatahi, you can see, are great orators, sports people, videographers. They are the most talented rangatahi in the world, in spite of and despite of. So when we accept the 1% of these settlements and when we sit there and we show we don't have special treatment, our long-term investments are performing better than those that have had local council long-term perpetual funds. We go out and we rebuild ourselves. We dust up and we dust off. And I think today is about taking a real serious look, as Ruakere said in his kōrero, is that we as the maunga and maunga people are here to make sure we look after everyone in Aotearoa. There's not a single kaupapa that you can find in Taranaki that isn't inclusive. The 1% that we accept, and I know that some of you are everyone's going to endorse this, and some are here to think that the tiriti is a closure. It is about honouring. It is about honouring te tiriti. It never expires, just like our mokopuna and just like the stance of our maunga. Today was always about our mokopuna. And after listening to our Te Kanawa Wilson and our connection to Te Kāoi maunga, we must always remember we never stand alone, even our maunga. We are interconnected in wakapapa in ways you could never know. So finally, I want to share again what Ruakere said this afternoon. Tū maunga, tū whenua, tū tangata, a strong maunga, a strong mountain, strong whenua, strong land, and strong tangata, strong people. Nō reiri te āhuatanga o tā tātou tūpuna ngā mihi aroha kei a koutou kua tau mai.
Greg Fleming.
Ko he tira maunga e tū mai rā. Ko Taranaki pia, nuku mai, neki mai, ki tāku aro kikini ai. Kei nā iwi e waru o Taranaki maunga, Ngāti Tama, Ngāti Mutinga, Ngāti Maru, Te Aotearoa, Taranaki, Nā rua hinei rangi, Ngāti rua nui, Nā rauru kitahi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Nōku te mairanga nui ki te tū i te aroaro o te mana o Taranaki whānui. Me te mihi ki atu ki tō koutou koro, kia koro Taranaki, mā tōna whakamana, mā te pere nei. Nā te mea, koina te mahi o tēnei pere. E hara tēnei hei hanga i tōna mana, e kā. He mana tōna mai rā nō. Heoi, mā tēnei pere e whakatangata ai ia. He wairua tōna, he mana tōna, ai rā ko Taranaki maunga te rā. Ki etahi, he rereke tēnei pere. He huanga te nuinga o te maramatanga. Kaua te maramatanga o tohu raua ko te whiti. Engarei ko te maramatanga Pākehā ke ara ko te enlightenment. He pere tēnei e tino nuku e neki te whakaro ki te tai ao me te wairua i te ture. Heoi ki au, ko te hua o te tino maramatanga kia marama ai tātou o te whānui, te hoho nu, te roa me te tike o tō tātou ao. Kaori e whakaiti te ao, e whakamomona te ao. E hara he mea tēnei kia wehi ai. Engarei, i tahi wā, e tahi horopaki, kaori e awhina i nei momo mea, nā reira, ka huri tōku reo ai nei, kia marama ai tātou. He te mangai o te whare. I listened last week to a Pūkōrero podcast conversation between Te Rāwhiti Bosch and Eru Kapakingi, a tāhua tō raua reo. They were talking about the difference of a Māori approach to CrossFit. Kaori he whakapakari te tinana anake. Eru was explaining it's not just about exercising the body, it's about recognising the full dimensions of the person, their spirit, their identity, and the role in that of language and expression of culture. From their kōrero, I was reminded of Tā Mason Jury's framework of holistic health that's now used enthusiastically across our health, education and welfare sectors. It's an understanding of full health, of hauora, that is rooted within this whenua and under this rangi. Te Whare Tapawhā recognises not just our physical health, but also our social, mental and spiritual health. It considers the relational, emotional and spiritual state of a person as essential to their physical health. Kia au koera te āwinga o te pere nei. For me, that's the effect of this type of legislation. It's about a whole order approach to our mountains, our rivers, our forests. It's about te ākitanga, caring, protecting and preserving in its fullest sense. And I believe it resonates with us all, because deep down we all know there's so much more to this world. I spoke to this last year in the second and third readings of the Samoan Citizenship Bill when I had the opportunity to thank their community for reminding us every day of the full dimensions of a truly rich life, of the deep reality of the relational and of the spiritual. It's why the legends of old speak to us as they do. It's why we're so moved by the stories of Tolkien and Lewis, of mountains and forests alive. For we are filled with wonder, we sense the thin spaces, we are in awe, and from that awe, we are better humans. We take better care of our world, we listen more carefully. One Sunday last June, before our select committee hearings in New Plymouth, we were welcomed onto Taranaki Maunga. I shared lunch with Wharihoka and Emere Wano, and in the afternoon walked up to the ski field with Tane Houston, a true mountain of a man. Nui tō pāhau e hoa, nui ake tō nākau I te puāwai I tō koro me ona uri tai oho. Tane, our conversation that day spoke more powerfully to this bill than anything I've encountered. The way you spoke of Taranaki, the depth of care you had for him, the genuine excitement you shared for everyone to experience him, and the vision you shared for how life-giving and life-restoring Taranaki is for the rangatahi whom you bring to the maunga, it was something else. Your heart clearly beat in sync with Taranaki's, and it brought to life for me what we are doing here today. Officially recognising the mana of Koro Taranaki and putting in place a genuine whole-order approach to caring for him. You spoke of the fauna, the seasons, the trails, the creeks, the summit in a way that added whole dimensions to what I'd seen in the mountain before. All of this came flooding back to me last week when I was speaking with one of the local MPs, for Taranaki shares his great mana across many electorates. I had asked Barbara Kuraga, you see, your host becomes Māori in terms of your pronunciation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as she is today.
I think it might be the same in Swiss, actually.
Kuraga. I asked her how her summer barbecue conversations had gone, explaining this kind of bill to her so many quizzical constituents. She said she would sum it all up by telling them, we take care of Taranaki's well-being and he takes care of us. Ma mātou e Taranaki e tiaki, a ma Taranaki mātou e tiaki. Ia au e whakaro e pāna ki Taranaki, huri oku whakaro ki ngā tangata o Taranaki, e whakahu tuia ahau. Whenever I think of Taranaki, my thoughts turn to the people of Taranaki who have shaped and formed me these recent years. At the first reading of this bill, and in my maiden speech, I spoke of my friend Te Waka McLeod. He uri ia o Ngāti Mutunga Raua ko te Aotearoa. She's the one that first invited me into a world which I did not know, even though it knew me. I vividly remember the first time staying at her marae, or Waiwaitara, and the vividness of my dreams that night as I lay beneath the whakairo of her tupuna. It was Te Waka who years earlier had shared with me a dream of her own, in which she saw me standing in front of a large gathering of kaumātua speaking to them in te reo Māori. I'd laughed. If you'd known me then, you'd understand what a wild dream that was. Te mutunga kia mai o te aroha noa o te atua. A few months later, I was at Waha Pakapaka when she received her moko kauwai. That evening, we gathered for dinner at Redress, and I found myself seated beside the moko ringatoi who had just given Te Waka her moko. This guy wasn't immediately stoked to be in my company, but 2 hours later, we had started a friendship that has shaped and challenged me in ways I find hard to explain. Rangikipa and I couldn't come from more different worlds, and yet we share the same vision for Aotearoa. In Rangi, there is a generosity and patience and grace that beckons invitation. I know those of you who know him going, seriously, o Rangikipa? There is. At an intellectual level, our understandings seem incompatible, but when Ngākau speaks to Ngākau, when Wairua speaks to Wairua, when we pause and really listen to one another, ata whakarongo, the kind of action Bishop Whakahuihui Verco called us to all in that sacred day at Waitangi in 1990, then we find ourselves in a thin space, a place that changes us, a place that unites us, and that's what I find it's like with Te Waka and Jairuka and Hamuera Tamihana and Puna Wano Bryant. Kei te mihi ki a koutou. In my experience, this is the āhua of Taranaki. Strength, patience, generosity and grace. And he, Koro Taranaki, stands there majestically. He invites. And today this house formally, at last, acknowledges him. Last November, after many years of yearning, my friend Te Waka finally had a child. Kahukura te hapai o te rangi mahorahora. Could there be a more beautiful name? And now it's in Hansard. Oh, I will. Kei te mihi ki a koe kahukura, ko koe he taonga tuku iho no te atua. He uri koe o Koro Taranaki. Tō ingawa e kōrero ai o te āhua o tō koro. I au e rongo ana tō ingawa mo te wā tuatahi huri o koe whakaro ki te āhua o tō iwi, o tō maunga, o tō koro. Ko kahukura, ko te matua tūpuna o Ngāti Mutunga. Mā Taranaki tātou e hāpai. Mā Taranaki e piki ai tātou ki te rangi. Mā Taranaki mātou e mā hora hora. Koira tōku whia ko mahana uri o Taranaki. Mā rātou ahau e mihi mai ki te tahi haerenga ki te ao Māori, he haerenga e kakahutia tōku maramatanga o te whānui me te hoho nui o tēnei whenua o tēnei rangi. Nā reira, he uri ahau o te māhorahora o Taranaki. I am a descendant of your generosity, and that is why, Madam Speaker, it is my greatest honour to, with all my wairua, commend this bill to the House.
Kia ora. Honourable Willie Jackson.
Ki aku whanaunga, ko tai mai ki te whakanui tēnei kaupapa tēnei te mihi ki a koutou. He hōna re nui ki te tū I mua I a koutou. Ki a kōrua Jamie Liana, ngā mihi ki a kōrua mō kōrua mahi a tākua. Nō reira tēnei te mihi I whakarangatira a mātou I tēnei wā. A tēnā koutou, tēnā no tātou katoa. Well, it's been a beautiful day there, Madam Speaker.
Let's keep it that way.
Yes. Might read my speech now. But it has been a beautiful day, and I think these are the types of kaupapa that do bring the House together. So I want to congratulate the Minister for shepherding this through. Well done to our Minister, and particularly obviously our previous Minister, Anuru over here, Anuru Little, who did a great job for us when we were in government. Really proud of Andrew's work. Not easy, Madam Speaker, to organise our people, and that's why I always put a Pākehā in charge of treaty settlements. It's sort of been a bit of a strategy of ours in Labour, because we're all related. But I'm really proud to see this go through. So I do want to acknowledge the present Minister and the former Minister. I want to acknowledge, and I missed it in my mihi, I want to acknowledge Tariana Turia, who was the MP too for the area. We all, so many here, would have been playing a part in her tangi, and I want to mihi to the Turia whānau at this stage, because we know they're under this taumahatanga at the moment. So I think we all send our aroha to them. And before I get into some of the other side of this settlement, and I think everyone's explained brilliantly how important it is and what it means, I do want to address the elephant in the room, Madam Speaker, and I know with these types of kaupapa that we do whakakotahi for the kaupapa, and we don't really, we try not to get too political, but it is a real, and I think Deb Ngārewa Peka talked about it, and Ginny Anderson talked about it. When we are doing such beautiful settlements, we're under this huge cloud at the moment. And that's a real problem. And we have to, and as Māori, it's a real dilemma for us as Māori, because we have to negotiate with whoever the government is. So I always say to our people, you just got to do the business. You got to negotiate. But you've got Te Ao Māori at high alert here. We heard that from Rahui Kapa the other day at Rātanapā, and I believe Jamie Tuta was saying something today in the Whai Kōrero. And it's not easy, Madam Speaker. It's not easy when you're under a cloud, and here we all come together for this kaupapa, and we've got one party who wants to dismantle our constitution. They want to dismantle our constitution, and so we have to work our way through that. It infuriates me that this is still proceeding, but I want to say to all our people today, I'm proud, and Labour are proud, all of the opposition are proud of the way we have handled ourselves through this kaupapa, Madam Speaker, with a lot of dignity, and we get on with the business. And so today is a tribute to that, and I want to mihi to everyone. You know, as some of you know out there, I too am a mokopuna of Taranaki. I know that some of you don't want to accept that, but my good friend Mahara Aotearoa was always the reminder to me when we were MPs from 1999. He would always say, don't you forget Taranaki, that Batley side, and Ngāti Tama and everything else. And I think that, you know, with these things, these times are sometimes sombre times, but there's so much to celebrate in terms of Taranaki. And there's so many people and personalities to celebrate. You know, I talked about Jamie and Liana and their leadership, and I want to congratulate you both. We know how hard it is, Jamie, you being the leader of just about everything, and the chair of everything, and we couldn't quite get you to stand for Labour because, you know, we know the pūtea wasn't high enough, but I want to congratulate you, brother. I want to congratulate you. You know, one of the true personalities, without doubt, of Taranaki and one of their leaders. I want to congratulate my cousin Dion Tuta too for his great mahi. Dion's my cousin. Our grandparents are brothers and sisters, believe it or not. You didn't know that, did you? You see, I'm hooked into this iwi. They're very, very close to me. All my whānau on that Batley side. And I remember the great personalities who were great leaders and advocates. I remember my auntie Hana Te Hemara, who, young Hana over here, or she's out of the room now, who was named after, who put the Māori language petition up. She's one of the great fighters for Taranaki and for Te Ao Māori. My friend Amakura, relation Amakura Pānoho, is she here today? I hope she's here today, yeah. And she's been in my ear for years, I tell you. Drive me crazy sometimes. And she should have been an MP, fantastic advocate. My good friend Dalvanius Prime, you know, who was I had a lot to do with, as Deb Ngārewa did. We did a lot of things in terms of Māori music. One of the great advocates for Taranaki. Howie Tamati, my mate, who continually was in my head telling me how useless rugby was. I want to mihi to him today. Mahara Aotearoa was a great advocate for your people, for our people. I want to mihi to Ruakere and the Hon whānau, and I'm sure you're here somewhere else. Kia ora. And I remember well his parents, Pat and Jeff. You know, they come from great stock, our Ruakere, one of the great academics and speakers of Māori in this country. Mihi nui kia koe e te whanaunga. For your mahi in terms of trying to cross over, trying to get everyone to understand what Māori messaging is all about. And well done to you and to your whānau, Ruakere. It's a privilege to have you here today. I want to remember my old mate, Te Kauhoi Wano, who was a huge part of my life when I was running our Māori radio set up in Auckland. He's very, very special to me. When I was pretty sick years ago, he was my biggest supporter, and I always remember him when Parihaka comes around. And of course his brother Whare Wano up there is one of the great leaders of Taranaki. Whare mihi nui kia koe e hoa. Yeah, I reckon you've done a great job there, you and your wife doing the business. Still looking for a house actually to stay during Matatini Whare. So if you can front up with something there, that would be terrific. But so many of these Taranaki people have been my whānau and my friends, and probably my best mate has been a fellow called Bernie O'Donnell, who's up there in the audience. And I mentioned Bernie not last because he's the last person, but I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud of him. I'm proud of him because of his upbringing, because he's been a ward of the state. I'm proud of him because he made his life in the city with us. He worked in the freezing works with me, been my friend since we were 18 years old. And I'm proud of him because he stood up to all those iwi fundamentalists, you know, like Jamie Tuta and all that lot, you know. And he talked about urban Māori rights. And he made his name, my brother up here in the city. And strong and tough. And as I said, he was probably responsible for my union career because he nominated me as a delegate in 1982, wasn't it, Bernie? So I'm really proud of him. And what makes me even prouder is that he's gone home. And he's working with New Plymouth City Council, taking his pukengas home, talking to them about the treaty, helping them with their reo. And I think that's the challenge for all our iwi, is how do we keep that crossover going? How do we keep incorporating our people who are not at home, who can't come back to New Plymouth, who live in the Poriruas, who live in the Māngares, who live in they proudly iwi, but they don't have the resources and the funding to get home. I think, Jamie, Liana, those are some of the challenges we face going forward. So congratulations to my whanaunga today. Just a lovely day, and I was just thinking about all those wonderful people who've been part of my life and will continue to be part of my life, and who've made Taranaki proud, and I think make us all proud today. So tēnei te mihi kia koutou, he hōnere nui tēnei te mihi kia koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā no tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Angai.
Dan Bidwa.
Te hei Māori ora. Ina mana, ina reo, ina iwi, tēnā koutou katoa. Te whare e tūnei, tēnā koe. Te papa e tāko tūnei, tēnā koe. Nā mate, haere, haere, haere atu rā. Ka mihi ki te iwi kāinga, nā iwi o Taranaki. Nau mai, haere mai, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Madam Speaker, it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm not going to do what Willie Jackson did and explain my connections to Taranaki. I don't have any. But Madam Speaker, it's a truly honour to be here today to witness this most historic occasion. Indeed, it's been an honour to help shepherd this bill through Parliament as the chair of the Māori Affairs Select Committee at the time. To be welcomed to your rohe, to visit your maunga, to hear your submissions. I wish to thank you for your hospitality, your generosity, and your fine kai. To understand the significance of the maunga to your communities has been a great privilege. To the past, to your tupuna, to your whānau and to your lives in the present, and to your mokopuna in the future. What you see every morning and night is what your tupuna saw hundreds of years ago, and it will be what future generations see many hundreds of years later. To me, the maunga's significance is clear in terms of providing sustenance, spiritual connection, well-being, and connection to your tupuna. Now, Madam Speaker, I am on record in this House as saying Taranaki maunga is the most beautiful maunga in all of Aotearoa. And I stand by that statement. It is a beautiful maunga, and it's been a great privilege to visit it as part of the Select Committee process. As members from across this House have signalled, this is a historic day. This is actually the 100th settlement or collective redress bill that this Parliament is due to pass. And I know that many of you have waited too long for this, 160 years for this moment. Madam Speaker, this bill, in terms of its details, explains a historical account to what the Crown did. It issues an apology, provides resource contributions. It creates a living person, te kahui tupua, and a legal entity to act on behalf of that legal person. It changes the name of the maunga and gives access to the iwi for certain facilities on the maunga. But Madam Speaker, most importantly, it is a chance for the Crown and this Parliament to acknowledge the past and right the wrongs of the past so that the iwi of Taranaki can focus on the future. And Madam Speaker, the future looks bright for Taranaki. Under this bill, there will be a new arrangement that will enable input from iwi and DOC into the management of the maunga, to unlock the potential of the maunga for many areas, economically, socially and environmentally, and to ensure that the maunga is taken care of well into the future. Now, Madam Speaker, I do wish to acknowledge the concerns that were raised in the Select Committee process, in particular those from local mountain clubs and the uncertainty caused. My message to them is clear. Concessions will continue. The process for new concessions is clear and transparent. And the intent is for public access to continue in perpetuity. But, Madam Speaker, Parliament can't legislate for relationships. And one thing I noticed, and my members on the Select Committee noticed when we were there, is there was a real willingness of iwi, of Taranaki, to engage with those mountain clubs in the future. So to them I'd say, engage the iwi, and I'm sure your issues will be addressed in the future. Madam Speaker, I just want to wrap up and acknowledge the many, many people who have brought this bill to where it is today. Former Minister Andrew Little, current Ministers Paul Goldsmith and Tama Potaka. I'd like to acknowledge the members of the Māori Affairs Select Committee and to the local MPs who worked hard to ensure that they were kept abreast of the bill and made time to hear the submissions as well. Negotiators, Ian Hicks, Hannah Morris from Te Arawhiti, Andrew McClellan from DOC, who I always get the name confused. Sorry, Andrew. The clerks from the Māori Affairs Select Committee, Tui, Pakita and Louis, thank you for your hard work in arranging Select Committee visits. To Jamie, maybe we can get you to run for the National Party in some time in the future. To Hemi and Liana, thank you for what you do for your communities. So, Madam Speaker, it is a great day for this Parliament and one of the rare occasions where this Parliament agrees in unison on the path forward. We welcome back the restored name, Te Papakura o Taranaki. We say haere rā to Mount Egmont. And we say haere mai, hoki mai, to Te Papakura o Taranaki. Madam Speaker, I commend this bill to the House. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Glenn Bennett.
He honere he kororia ki te atua, he maungaronga ki te whenua, he whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Madam Speaker, it is always an interesting day to stand in this House and to have a collective supportive approach to a piece of legislation. And as the Honourable Willie Jackson more than alluded to, talked about. This is a house of contradictions at times, and in the morning, MPs in this place, in the Justice Committee, are debating the Treaty Principles Bill, and in the afternoon we're sitting here in connection, in solidarity, supporting this piece of legislation. And no, Willie Jackson, my couch is not available, by the way. As I look and consider what this means for all of us in the gallery, all of us around Taranaki, all of us around Aotearoa, and all of our ancestors and whānau around the world, I think we need to consider that this place, even though it has done so much harm and has hurt so many people, this place can also be a place that brings hope. Or should I say allows hope, because we're not the deliverers of hope, we're the people who create opportunities, I think, for us as a community to then be the instigators, the creators of hope and a future together. This place can be argy-bargy, it can be a place where the contests of ideas crash head on. And I'm glad that as we sit and we ponder today, we stand in unity together. This is a scary place, but it can actually be a place that brings us together and allows hope to come. I want to acknowledge our ancestors, your ancestors, as we had our mihi whakatau earlier, and to see in the gallery this afternoon photos of those who have gone before us. To think of those who are in our hearts and our minds right now, who are no longer with us, recently passed or past decades or centuries ago. We acknowledge those people because they have brought us to this place. And as I listened earlier and heard about and had read as well about what happened in the late 1970s in my lifetime, when the generosity that the government allowed you to have was returned and then taken away again, I really consider that we need to see the way we move forward and continue to grow and bring our communities, bring our cultures, and bring Te Tiriti together. Now, many people consider the fact that the breaches of the Crown, the challenges of a century or two ago, are those things that many people, if you walk down the street of New Plymouth, will say, well, that was in the past. But as we know, in the last decade, there have been things done on your beautiful maunga that were not right, that broke tikanga. Things like barbecues at the top and ashes left behind and fires lit. Things that my Pākehā ancestors need to apologise for. But today, I want us to consider about how we move forward from here. How do we move to a place 15 years away from the commemoration of the signing of Te Tiriti or Waitangi? And what is my responsibility and my response? And as I leave this place this afternoon, it is to continue to educate myself and continue to educate my people. Because so often I listen and I learn and realise that you're all waiting for me to catch up. You're all waiting for my people to hurry up and get on the waka together. Today I want to acknowledge the iwi of Taranaki, Ngāti Tama, Ngāti Mutunga, Taranaki iwi, Te Aotearoa, Ngāti Maru, Ngā Ruahine, Ngāti Ruanui, Ngā Rura ki Tahi, the settlements you've been through, also the Pariaka Reconciliation Bill, and now we are here. And how do we move forward? I commit to working with my people that we can be good Te Tiriti partners, that the legacy that I will leave is that my people are educated and understand that we can walk together to 2040.
Madam
Carl
Speaker.
Bates.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Ruapehu te maunga, ko Wanganui te awa, no Wanganui aho, ko Carl Bates taku ingoa, ko Meta Paramata Wanganui, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I want to take the opportunity to start off by welcoming those from Ngā iwi o Taranaki, from across Taranaki, to this house today. As one of the 4 directly elected representatives of yours in this house, along with my colleagues Debbie Naringapeka, where are we? Barbara Kruger and David McLeod, I welcome you to this house as your directly elected representatives, as I say, will play a role in the future of this legislation here. Jenny Mycroft referenced the story of Taranaki Maunga, and indeed it's one that I shared in my maiden speech. And I was going to reference it this afternoon because it doesn't fall lightly, or the sort of context of that story, the journey of Taranaki Maunga down the Wanganui Awa, up the South Taranaki coast, ultimately to the place that it now lays, connects with the journey of personhood that's been taken through this House of Representatives, with Te Awa Tupara being passed in 2017, and now the passing of this legislation today. These days in this House are significant. They're milestones. They're days that are often not easily forgotten, and are certainly taken with a heaviness by all members here on the floor. I was reflecting coming into the House today on the words of Minister Goldsmith earlier today when he spoke about Egmont 250 years ago, sailing past and deciding to call this mountain Egmont. And that many of us will be the last generation that will know what Mount Egmont was or meant, or the context that it holds. Today, down here in Wellington, my 6-year-old son, Angus, has been spending the last couple of days of the school holidays. And he will only know this maunga as Taranaki Maunga. And I think that is significant and something for us all to treasure. I want to just acknowledge the feedback that my colleagues took on board from us as the local members of Parliament through the Select Committee process. We shared some of the feedback that was being received, and that's already been referenced by my colleague Dan Bidwell. But this legislation does bring a new set of korero that's going to commence as, in I suppose my language, this new situation is put into practice. It's going to require trust, collaboration, work and engagement across iwi, Crown, the Department of Conservation, Council and mountain users. In my maiden speech, I also referred to another little quote that I learnt as a youngster, as a scout, climbing on Taranaki Maunga a few years back. And that was take only photos and leave only footprints. And I think in many ways the spirit of that language is one that I know will be part of the korero that will happen as we look forward. Last year I had the opportunity to visit Aotearoa with Minister Potaka, and we had somewhat of a robust korero. I look forward to the opportunity to visit again both to Aotearoa and others across both the Wanganui electorate and Taranaki as we go through this process that will come as this legislation is turned into practice. Madam Speaker, it is an honour and a privilege to commend this bill to the House this evening.
Madam Speaker.
Honourable Pina Hinare.
Tēnā koe te māngai o te whare. E kara e rua kere. Ka whai whakaaro ake a hau me pēhea rā tēnei hei timatanga kōrero. Ki roto i te kaupapa kua whakakahu i tātou i te rānei. Me ki pēnei ki tō tāua tupuna ki a Taranaki. E Taranaki nāu taku ārero Māori i tō tōia mai taku ngākau kia puta ki te whai au ki te ao marama. E te maunga e Taranaki nāu taku ngākau kia puta ake ki te ao marama hei tirohanga ma te katoa. Nāu e Taranaki taku tūnga hei whakamāna wāke ki a koe i tēnei rangi. E ngā uri e ngā whanaunga huri noa i tō tātou whare. Me he tuanui kore ki runga i tēnei whare ka kite atu koutou he hā ua ki wahora. Ka re kore ka whai whakaaro te Māori hiaha tēnei tohu o te ua. E hoki ngā mahara ki te hunga kua riro atu ki te pō. He tāanga manawa ki roto i ngā pēhitanga o te wā. Kāti ka tahuri ake aku whakaaro ki oku rata tūtahi, ki oku nohoanga tiro atu i te rangi a Aotearoa. Kia rātau, kua wehe atu ki te pō ka kia ke ahau, kia hautū tō koutou waka. Ki te mākuru o taku mahara, kia pako ai te rangi, kia tau wāhi ake ki runga o pauwahi, ki runga o te rerenga tōpuni, ki runga anō hoki i a māramatanga. Kia puta ake ngā uri e kōrero ana i te rānei, i te māramatanga i kawea nei e te hunga wairua ki roto i ngā taumaha, kua pahuri ake nei. Ko ngā ingoa kei e oku ngutu e oku rangatira. Ko te hunga rongo nui, kua rangona e mau ko taringa i te rānei. Ana, kua kōrero hia tōku matua wiri ki te āhuatanga kia kahurangi tāri ana tūria. Ko ia ko te whakatinanatanga o tōna awa me ona kō pikonga katoa. Aha kua riro atu kei runga tonu i te pai o mahara. Ka whai whakaaro ake ahau ki tetahi o ngā tāngata rongo nui rawa atu ki roto i au, arā, ko huirangi wai kerepuru. Aha kua kōrero mai a Taranaki whānui, nā rātou te rākau mātua ka kia ke ahau ka hore, moroto mai au o Ngāpuhi. Engari kei koia kei te kūrai o aku mahara i tēnei wā tonu. Nā ka tahuri ake ki tetahi atu o ngā tino kaumātua rongo nui o te kāinga o Taranaki, anā kia tiki raumati. Hoki ake aku mahara ki te taima i mate te kaumātua rā. Me te totohoi o te iwi, kei hia te takotoranga whakamutunga o tēnei kaumātua. Me tana hia kia takoto ki wānganui i te hunga, nā rātou tō koutou whenua i tāhai. Hea ai, hei tohu maharatanga mo te hunga Pākehā, hei tohu maharatanga mo ngā reanga me ngā whakatupuranga e haere ake nei. Kāti, ka tangi tonu te ngākau ki a rātou kua wehe atu ki te pō. Ki roto i te reo o Ngāpuhi ka kia ke ahau, haere mai, haere. Nā ka whakahokia mai ngā rārangi kōrero ki a tātou te hunga ora. E te tuakana e Jamie, kōrua tahi e oku tuakana ko Hemi, e te tuahine e Leana. Ka mea mai taku matua ki au i mua i tōna matenga. E pēni, ko koe taku kūmara kino nei te kawa. Waiho mātou iwi koutou e whakareka ake. Kei konei mātou e whakareka ana i a koutou e oku kūmara. Nā koutou e nei mahi taumaha i te whakatutuki ngā moe a Aotearoa mātua o tāua tūpuna. Nō reira e mihi atu ana ki a koutou, engari kia kāre i te mea ka mihi ki a koutou anake. Engari ki te tini, ki te manu, e hāpai nei tēnei kaupapa, tēnei kāmihi. Kāti e te māngai o te whare, ka whakaaro ake ahau ki te āhuatanga o ngā kōrero kua rangona e māoko taringa i te rānei. E pāna ki tēnei kaupapa. Ko etahi, ka kia ke ahau, e pū ana roto, e he ana waho. Ko etahi, ka kia ke ahau, ka kite a pēni i te kokonga o te ngākau. Ko etahi, ka kiake ahau, ka tira tēnei mahi tōrangapū, tēnei mahi pōhea heara wātu o te mahi porotiki. Haunga rā ko e nā whakaaro e te māngai o te whare, koe ko te kaupapa, kua karanga hui ai tātou i te rānei. Kia whakanui ake i te hunga, e noho mai ana ki runga nei, ki o rātou whānau, ki o rātou tūpuna, nā rātou tēnei kaupapa i tīmata i te hia tau ki muri. E te māngai o te whare, ko te āhuatanga o etahi o ngā kōrero me ki pēnei ake ahau ki te whare. Kua rongo atu ahau i te kōrero o oku ake no roto o ngā puhi, me tana hari, me tana koa, kua tākoha e ia me tōku matua a matua Shane i te rahi pūtea ki ngā whare huhua katoa ki roto o Taranaki. Ai, me mihi kātika. Engari me pēnei pēr taku kōrero ki a tātou. Aha koa te papai o taku whare, iaha te take o taku whare mehe mea e he manawa ana ahau. Aha koa te ātāhua o taku whare, iaha te take mehe mea kei te pauri tonu ahau. Ka waiho ake tēnā whakaaro ki a tātou e oku rangatira i te rāne. Ko ngā nawe me ngā mamaitanga katoa o te ao Māori, ka kore ea i te rahi pūtea, aha koa te nui te iti rānei o te rahi. Kua rongo atu ahau i etahi o ngā kōrero, e kimi atu ana i te whakapapa ki roto i a koutou o ngā puhi. Nā, kua rongo koutou o ngā puhi. Ki te hunga e mohi ana ki tērā kōrero tinihanga ai, kākata. Anā ko ngā pānga katoa kei wainga nui a tātou, koina taku hari i te rāne, kuara mai anō. I rongo atu ahau i te kōrero a tōku whaia a tēpnei, mo te kaha, o te rōpu kapahaka o Pātea. Ka hoki oku mahara ki tōku tupuna ki a Hami Primer. Ka hoki taku mahara ki tōku matua ki a Dalvanius Primer. Ko ngā uri o mō tatau, i haere atu ki roto i a koutou, kia tuituia te herenga whakapapa ki wainga nui a tāua. Nā hoina te take ka whakaaro ake anō au e kara e ruakere ki te āhuatanga o tōku maunga o mō tatau. Nā, ko te kaupapa e pāna ki a Taranaki i te rāne e mihi atu ana. Me pērā anō kā tika ki roto i o tātou kāinga katoa, huri noa i te motu whānui. E mea ana oku mātua tūpuna ko tōku maunga o mō tatau, ko ia ko te tatau ki te reinga, te tatau ki o tātou mātua tūpuna. Ai marika he tapu kei roto i tēnā kōrero. Ai marika he mauri tangata, he mauri tūpuna, he mauri atua, ki roto i ngā kōrero e pāna ki tōku maunga me pērā kā tika ki ngā maunga huri noa i te motu whānui kei kia, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Kāti, e te māngai o te whare, kua ki te atua hau, kua āhua tatapau te wā ki aune. E oku whanaunga o Taranaki, a tai hoake nei, ka tau te ao Māori ki runga i a koutou mo te matatini te take. Ko te hia kia hūro katoa te ao Māori ki ngā whakaotinga o te kaupapa, kua whakakahu i tātou i te rānei. Kia rangona e te ao Māori, e te ao whānui, i ngā waiata, i ngā haka, i ngā kōrero katoa e pāna ki tō koutou kāinga. Nō reira karanga mai ki te motu whānui ka tau ki runga i a koutou a te marama e tū mai nei. Ka mutu te kaupapa ki roto i au o Waitangi, ka tere te hoi hoki wainga nui i a koutou he whakanui ake i tō tāua ao Māori. Ko reira anō tātou mihi ki a tātou anō, ko reira anō tātou tangitahi ki o tātou mate, kei reira anō tātou e whakahua ake i te kaupapa kua hui mai tātou i te rānei. Nō reira ko taku kōrero whakamutunga ki a koutou e kara e ruakere, haere hoki atu ka rā koutou ki te wā kāinga, ki ngā manaakitanga o te wā hingaru. A tai hoake nei tātou katoa, hui tahi ai, noho tahi ai. Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou e te māngai o te whare, tēnā tātou katoa.
Call on David McLeod.
Tēnā koe te māngai. Tamarau nō runga i te rangi, heke i hoki raro ki te whakamāri.
Te tatari ai, ki te hurahanga o te tāpora o rongo uiroa. Taku kuia e, te ara o taku tupuna I toia ai au, ko te ati iaua nō runga I te rangi. Ko te toki te tangatanga I te rā, tā ringa mango, ko te kite ne, ueha, a ti ei mauri ora. Mr. Speaker, this neri I've just recited recounts the origins of a number of iwi o Taranaki, specifically those of the Tokomaru waka and descendants of Awanui o Rangi. The reason why I recited this neri is to remind everyone that mana whenua, tangata whenua, here in Pōneke and the Greater Wellington region, and indeed across the strait to the top of the South Island, or Te Tau Ihu, have strong connections back to Taranaki also. There are many whānau hapu down here in these parts who have ancestry links back to Taranaki and whose whānau reside here as a result of the heke or the migrations that took place particularly between 1822 and 1833. So it's also an important occasion for the tangata whenua of the land that I stand on today. The 8 iwi of Taranaki, Ngāti Tama, Ngāti Mutunga, Te Aotearoa, Taranaki Tūturu, Ngārua Hine, Ngāti Maru, Ngāti Ruanui, and Ngārauru ki Tahi, all have been waiting a very, very long time for this redress to occur. All 8 completed their own individual settlements, and now the attention appropriately turns to addressing the historical injustices and in recognising the importance of Taranaki maunga and its surrounding peaks to tangata whenua. There are other peaks or tupuna also included in this address other than Taranaki, the likes of Panitahi, also known as Phantom's Peak, to the south of Taranaki, and on the northwestern side where Pawakai and with Patuha and Kaitake. As you could imagine, Mr. Speaker, there are many legends about Taranaki and some of them have already been mentioned today. But I did want to mention that Taranaki had a name prior to Taranaki, Pukeonaki, and I heard that mentioned today. I think it was Ruakere that talked of that. Pukeonaki was the name when he was standing near Tūrangi, prior to having his bit of a kōrero and a bit of a fisticuffs with Tongariro. The name Taranaki originated from the first ancestors of the Taranaki iwi, or the first ancestor, and that was or Taranaki Tūturu. His name was Rua Taranaki, and he travelled up high up into the source of the Huatahua stream, or the Stony River, where he ceremonially anchored the mountain to have his name. So, Mr. Speaker, when Captain James Cook sailed past on the 10th of January 1770, the mountain that he saw already had a name. And one can only imagine the distaste to Māori to learn he had been given a new name from some mate back in England. But thankfully, only a short time, 216 years later, Taranaki was brought back as a dual name. It wasn't until 2020 that the name Mount Egmont was appropriately removed, and the mountain will now only be known as Taranaki Maunga. Mr. Speaker, the Parliament of New Zealand met for the first time on the 24th of May 1854 in Auckland. And it was only a very short time later in 1865 that the 53 MPs of the then Parliament proclaimed 1.2 million acres of Taranaki land, including Taranaki Maunga, confiscated. Coincidentally, that happened to be the same year that Parliament moved from Auckland down here to Pōneke, Wellington. It has taken the subsequent 160 years since then to get this redress before us today. 160 years of Māori, tangata whenua, uri o Taranaki, not being able to authentically connect to their tupuna.
Seeing the wonderful developments at the Ngāti Ruanui Stratford Mountain House and the soon-to-be opened Ngāruahine Dawson Falls Mountain Lodge provides great examples and a glimpse of the very positive outcomes Māori can provide for all. And there's more to come soon with the proposed redevelopment of the North Taranaki Centre to hopefully begin soon and owned and managed by tangata whenua. For far too long, Māori have been excluded from Taranaki maunga. Having Māori at the decision-making table makes absolute sense, and allowing tangata whenua to generally connect with their tupuna and allow meaningful interaction will help pave the way to a very good future. It is impossible to ignore the wrongdoings of the past and the scars they leave, and they are deep. And there are many over a long time. But I am confident that if we concentrate our effort and focus on the future, and the mana of the maunga is recognised in a Māori way and not just as a landscape, future generations will prosper and in a spiritual, cultural and physical way. Taranaki maunga shapes the physical landscape of our region, and it provides a rich store of biodiversity. Our weather is largely defined by our maunga. It has over 530 named tributaries and streams that flow from it, and it is an often photographed landscape from space. Taranaki has some of the most fertile land in New Zealand, accompanied by a plentiful amount of rainfall and sunshine. It's not always raining. It's a very special place to visit, a place to get away from the hustle bustle of our busy lives. There are many recreational options up there, from half-hour walks to more adventurous multi-day tramps, including stays at various huts. During winter, you can ski on the Mount Maunganui field when there's snow, and of course, you can attempt to climb to the top. Unfortunately, though, many people have lost their lives on our maunga. In fact, the records to 2017 show that 84 people have lost their lives, with it being classed the second most dangerous maunga behind Aoraki when it comes to fatalities. It is one of those places, when you look at its peaks, it looks so close, it looks stunning, it looks so easy to climb, but tragically, some get caught out by the changeable weather, lack of preparedness, the technical ability required, or simply underestimate the fitness required. It's a place to be respected in more ways than one. It's also a great place for education. I can fondly remember at primary school going to Konini Lodge and learning about flora and fauna, learning how pests affect our biodiversity, learning how not to get lost when tramping, learning what to do when you do get lost, and also daring to bathe in the ice-cold waters at the base of Dawson Falls or Te Rere o Noke, and then spending hours trying to de-thaw. Mr. Speaker, today marks a very special day for Ngā iwi o Taranaki. It is the start of a healing process, a start of a new beginning, a start of new hope. This bill is the 100th settlement to take place, and it is the third to use the concept of a legal personality. I could talk about some of the details of the redress, but that's been well mentioned already. But I do want to join the acknowledgement and the mahi of those that were part of the negotiating process, both on the Crown side and also on the iwi side. I do wonder, though, what Jamie Tuta is going to focus on now. I was once told that he had more chairs than Harvey Norman. You know, maybe he could buy a furniture business, I don't know. Or maybe he could actually come down here. Hey, I'll help you out, Jamie, but just don't get me in charge of your donation returns. We won't go there. There are many leaders of Taranaki in the gallery today, and we see them all here. And only one thing I do think of is, oh, where if the bus crashes, boy, what would that actually say? Woo! I also acknowledge the Honourable Chris Finlayson, Eugenie Sage, Willow Jean Prime, Andrew Little, and Paul Goldsmith for their leadership. But Mr. Speaker, Mostly, I would like to acknowledge the many who worked so hard and for so long for a better outcomes for Taranaki Māori and indeed Māori katoa who are no longer with us today. Mr. Speaker, having lived in Taranaki all my life, I feel humbled and privileged to speak on this bill that means so much to so many from the place that I call home. It is the righting of a wrong. But it's also an opportunity for us to move forward with great hope, free from mururaupatu. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, the ayes have it.
Te piri whakatupua mō te kāhui tupua Taranaki Maunga Collective Redress Bill, third reading.
Now, waiata, I think. Just take a moment for the gallery to clear. I call on Government Order of the Day number 3.
Government Notice of Motion number 2, Appointment of Chief Ombudsman.
The Honourable Andrew Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that under sections 3, subsection 1 and 5, subsection 1 of the Ombudsman Act 1975, the House recommend to the Governor-General that John Richard Allen be appointed as an Ombudsman for a term of 5 years, and that under section 3, subsection 4 of the Ombudsman Act 1975, upon taking up the office of Ombudsman, John Richard Allen be appointed as Chief Ombudsman with effect from the date that the incumbent Chief Ombudsman vacates the position. The Officers of Parliament Committee have presented a report to the House recommending the appointment of John Richard Allen as Chief Ombudsman. The Office of the Ombudsman plays an important role in upholding New Zealand's democratic systems. It is an organisation that is able to undertake a number of inquiries following requests from members of the public. One of the most prominent roles is its application of the Official Information Act. Mr. Allen is the Chancellor of Te Huranga Waka Victoria University of Wellington and Chief Executive of Wellington, New Zealand. He is a former Chief Executive of the New Zealand Racing Board, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and the New Zealand Post Group. I want to thank the Officers of Parliament Committee for their work in selecting the new Ombudsman. Mr. Allen's nomination was supported by all parties across the House, and I wish him all the best for his term as Ombudsman. Mr. Speaker, it's my personal pleasure to make this opening remarks about his appointment. And as I said, a very important role, and it's good that we've got a person of high calibre to undertake this role, and I fully endorse it.
Greg O'Connor.
I rise to express the Labor Party support for the motion to appoint John Allen to this position. I was being fortunate to be part of the Officers of Parliament Committee, led ably by yourself, Mr. Speaker, which made this recommendation. And I have to say the quality of the applicants for the position was extremely high, and the successful applicant was always going to have to display the outstanding qualities to distinguish themselves from this group. And I thank those who took the time to prepare and subject themselves to the selection process. However, the cross-party committee, which made this recommendation, worked diligently and collegially in coming up with this recommendation, and I commend my fellow committee members. I now turn to the recommended appointee, John Allen. Mr. Allen's strong public service will serve him well for the role, having been the Chancellor of Te Huranga Waka Victoria University of Wellington, Chief Executive of Wellington, New Zealand, New Zealand Post, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and the New Zealand Racing Board. This wide range of positions have not only exposed Mr. Allen to contact with organisations which are an important part of the infrastructure of New Zealand, locally and internationally, it also means he has a range of contacts at many levels of New Zealand society, something that will be an asset in this position. The Ombudsman's role is an essential one in reassuring New Zealanders that their concerns around the operation of the public service can be dealt with from outside that same service. This independence is assured by the fact that the office reports directly to Parliament and not to the public service. The outgoing Ombudsman, Peter Boschia, has done a very good job of raising the profile and scope of the office, and on behalf of the Labor Party, I'm confident Mr. Allen will consolidate and enhance this position, and I wish to congratulate Mr. Boschia for his service, and we wish him well. In an era where information on individuals is increasingly available on social media platforms, again, it's essential private citizens have a champion protect their interests both in obtaining information and preventing abuse of the same. The Ombudsman's office is that champion, and I'm again happy to commend Mr. Allen to this position. I commend John Allen to the position of Ombudsman.
Mr. Speaker.
Ricardo Mendes March.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Green Party, I would like to congratulate John Allen on his appointment to the role of the Chief Ombudsman. Now, my head am I. The Ombudsman is an officer of Parliament, independent of government. Likewise, the office staff are not public servants. I should note that the word ombudsman in Swedish actually means grievance person. The role of the Ombudsman in the legislation under which they operate, the Official Information Act, are critical in providing a route to follow where people feel aggrieved by a response from government agencies. Transparency is important in a free and democratic society. The Ombudsman website has an incredibly good detailed information for members of the public to help understand why they should be aware of the role and how they can interact alongside that. And I think the role of the Ombudsman was really well exemplified by the outgoing Chief Ombudsman, Judge Peter Bolsher. We thank him for his outstanding work in the role, for being a champion for transparency and for the rights of our communities when it comes to holding government to account. We look forward to working with John Allen and wish him all the best in this new role.
Jamie Arbuckle.
Thank you. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to support the new appointee of John Allen to the Chief Ombudsman position. I was one of the officers of Parliament that was a part of the decision-making to this. As our overpast chair, the Labour Party has said that process was a very robust process, something that I really enjoyed being a part of. The appointee of Mr Allen, he's had a long career in the public sector, in the MFA, the Racing Board and New Zealand Post. What I did want to talk about, Mr Speaker, was actually the office, how it is actually independent, something that we must have a lot of trust in, a high level of confidence that we need in the Ombudsman's office. So the leader or the chief of that needs to be someone of high skill and that people have a high level of trust in. It's also the Ombudsman is something that we look for fairness for all New Zealanders, and as we know, it looks into complaints and makes various investigations and reports into a lot of different avenues into New Zealand society. So function is something that's very, very important. It was formed in 1962, but we also learnt through the process that the complexity of the office has changed a lot over the years, and the amount of cases that it deals with has very much grown. So I wish Mr Allen all the luck in his new role, and New Zealand First, our support behind him, but also the outgoing Ombudsman Peter Bolsher for his duty and how he has dealt with that office over a number of years and made it into something I think most New Zealanders are very much proud of. So thank you very much, Mr Speaker.
Before I put the question, can I...
sorry, Mr Speaker.
Sorry.
No, my apologies. Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Tēnā tātou te whare. Mr Speaker, I'm just going to take a slightly different angle to this speech, and particularly because absolutely to acknowledge John and coming into the role. But what I think can platform somebody into a new role is what they've left behind is in good nick. And my view would be, after being part of the appointment group, we've come to that is most certainly shown in the process, and I want to make point of that. I want to make point of the fact that Peter Bolsher, in his whole approach to the Ombudsman role and his office, he did two things. He did a bunch of stuff, but two of the things that he did really well, I think, he took the office to the people. He expanded the capacity in that team, he grew the team, and he grew the capability in that team. It needed that at the time, just so we know. And he did that very, very well. And so you've got a sizable team there of about 240 people. So that's a lot of capability to grow and then to be able to serve our whole nation, Mr Speaker, so I want to mention that. The other thing that he did remarkably well, in my view, and therefore particularly in Māori communities, he took his office out, he took his team out, He sat with whānau. He came all the way to Te Kao. Nobody comes to Te Kao. There's only 10 people that live there. No, there's a few more. But he brought him and his office out, and particularly with a focus on engaging with tangata whenua. And it was noticed. And certainly when I first met him back when he was Judge Bashir, and then of course as the Ombudsman in his role. So I think what he's been able to do is leave a strong setting for John. And so in the process of the interviews and then appointing John, what I think John's going to find in it, that he's got a strong platform to do his work. You'll see already his history in the public sector, and so he's ready to go. And in my view, I think he'll pick up those particular aspects of the role that Judge Bashir or Peter Bashir was able to set and actually accelerate and elevate the work, because it is such integral and critical work. So I just want to make those remarks. I congratulate John amongst all the people that were interviewed. I'm glad for the appointment. I think it'll do well, and I commend this idea and this result. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Most appropriate comments. And before I put the question, I'd like to add my congratulations to John Allen and join in the other compliments that have been offered to retiring Ombudsman Peter Bashir. Time will give us an opportunity to better reflect and recognise that service. Can I also congratulate the members of the Officers of Parliament Committee? Often there's a lot of criticism of the way Parliament works, but the process that was involved there, involving all parties across the Parliament, was, I think, quite exemplary, and recognises that all members of this House appreciate the importance of an open democracy and therefore the role of the Ombudsman. With that, the question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Call on Government Order of the Day, number 4.
Māori Purposes Bill, first reading.
The Honourable Tamapota.
Mr Speaker, kia ora tātou e noho nei roto I tō tātou whare. I present the legislative statement on the Māori Purposes Bill.
The legislative statement is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the parliamentary website. The Honourable Tamapotaka.
I move that the Māori Purposes Bill be now read a first time, and I nominate the Māori Affairs Select Committee to consider the Māori Purposes Bill. At the appropriate time, I intend to move that the bill be reported to the House by 30 July 2025. This bill proposes a suite of minor, technical and non-controversial amendments to Māori Affairs legislation to provide entities with greater autonomy and decision-making power. Though the amendments in the bill are minor and technical in nature, they will have a significant impact on Māori entities by removing red tape, administrative burdens and modernising the enabling legislation. Modernising legislation aligns with the government's aims of delivering better public services by meeting good government responsibilities, ka wānatanga responsibilities. This bill will ease administrative burdens by removing unnecessary legislative restrictions, lowering both compliance and administrative costs. It also supports Māori economic development, as lowering compliance costs and reducing the resources needed to meet legislative requirements will allow entities to focus on growth and innovation, which can contribute to a stronger economy. The bill has been developed in consultation with Māori entities across the motu, their input instrumental in ensuring the legislation will better meet the needs of Māori communities, both now and into the future. It reflects the evolving aspirations of Māori and ensures that the Crown continues to honour its commitments. The bill contains provisions that update and streamline a range of existing statutes. It proposes amendments to 8 acts and 5 regulations, as well as the repeal of 3 Māori Purposes Acts. First, the bill amends the Māori Community Development Act 1962, very well known, which established the New Zealand Māori Council, Māori Wardens and community officers. The amendments to this Act and the associated Māori Community Development regulations will allow Māori associations to hold meetings electronically and appoint co-chairpersons, which is what many of our entities like to do, as well as giving them greater choice and flexibility in how they manage their affairs. Second, the bill amends the Māori Purposes Fund Act 1934-35 and the Māori Purposes Fund Regulations 1937, very old, nearly 100 years old, Mr Speaker. The Act established the Māori Purposes Fund, which provides grants and loans for a range of activities for the benefit of Māori. These include the promotion of health, education, arts and crafts, social and economic welfare, and of course the preservation of Te Reo Māori. Modernising the Act will provide better mechanisms for administering the funds. Administering the amendments will allow electronic meetings, something of the new age, remove the requirement for resolutions to be signed by letter or telegram, and enable the chairperson to call special meetings. Technical amendments that you'd expect to enable these hui to go a bit more efficiently. The bill also contains an amendment to modernise the requirements for presenting the annual report and associated documents to this House. Third, the bill amends the Māori Soldiers Trust Act 1957, which was established for the benefit of Māori First World War veterans and a scholarship fund to commemorate the services of the late Tāpira Nanata for Māori. Modernising the Act will allow the Trust to operate in a modern-day context and better serve the descendants of Māori soldiers. Amendments to the Act will modernise the appointment, removal and resignation of this committee and appointment procedure for committee members, modernise meeting provisions to allow for electronic meetings, and modernising the procedure for the preparation and disclosure of the annual financial statements. Fourth, the bill proposes changes to the Māori Trust Boards Act 1955, something I studied a lot of many, many years ago. That Act made provision for trust boards to administer funds, land and other resources for Māori communities. Modernising the Act through amendments will strengthen the purpose of the Māori Trust Boards by addressing outdated administrative processes and making it easier for trust boards to fulfil their purpose. Amendments will do this by allowing trust boards to advertise board nominations online. New age, Mr Speaker. By changing requirements so that any newspaper advertisements only need to be for 1 day. Providing for electronic meetings and again co-chairpersons. Allowing the board to set the remuneration for the secretary. Clarifying the process for filling extraordinary vacancies and updating obsolete references. The fifth set of amendments are to the Māori Trustee Act 1953 and the amendments to this Act and the regulations associated with it, Note 2009, support the goals of the Māori Trustee by modernising legislation, removing administrative barriers, thus allowing the Māori Trustee to operate more efficiently, and I welcome the support of the Māori Trustee in this matter. The amendments will reduce the administrative burden on the trustee by adding a threshold when the trustee must report to account holders on interest on distributable income, and also change how distributable income from common fund investments is calculated. Finally, it will also modernise the language and terms in the Act. The sixth set of amendments relate to Te Ture Mo Te Reo Māori 2016, the Māori Language Act 2016. The Act established Te Mātāwai as an independent statutory entity to provide leadership on behalf of iwi and Māori, lead the mahi around the mahi Māori, and in their role as kaitiaki of the Māori language. The Act's purpose, support the partnership approach to the revitalisation of Te Reo Māori, and amendments to this Act include adding raising awareness of revitalisation activity and encouraging, supporting and empowering iwi and Māori as learners and speakers of Te Reo as a purpose of Te Mātāwai. Creating regulation powers so that the names and makeup of kāhui can be changed easily. Can't wait to see some of my own iwi actually included on the schedule. And the name of a court can be updated in the schedule of courts where Te Reo Māori may be spoken. And finally, providing for electronic meetings and again co-chairperson arrangements. Consequential amendments have also been made to the Māori television service, Te Arataki Whakaata Irirangi Māori Act 2003. Finally, Te Ture Whenua Māori Act 1993, a very important act which reflects a long history to address challenges facing Māori landowners and the management and governance that goes with that. The Act as it currently stands aims to create practical solutions that enable Māori landowners to make decisions that best serve their aspirations while ensuring Whenua Māori is protected. In addition to the amendments to the Act itself, the bill amends Incorporation Constitution Regulations 1994 and the Reservation Regulations 1994. Collectively, the amendments in this bill will add to the history and the herstory of Te Ture Whenua Māori Act and benefit Māori landowners by allowing trusts and corporations and reservation trusts to meet electronically and have co-chairperson arrangements, modernise outdated terminology, and addressing technical issues such as allowing the Land Court to exercise powers under the Property Law Act relating to easement and covenant provisions with respect to Māori freehold land and any other land that the application is related to in the court. Finally, it will also give the Māori Land Court the same powers as set out under Part 2 of the Contract and Commercial Law Act as other courts when considering contractual matters before it. In addition to the amendments I've talked about today, The bill also repeals the Māori Purposes Acts of 1937, 39 and 45. It's a tidy up of the statute books, as those books no longer have any operative provisions. To summarise, the bill proposes a number of minor technical and non-controversial amendments which, if enacted, will enable Māori entities to improve and operate more effectively and efficiently without the unnecessary red tape and administrative burden. While the amendments in this bill are minor and technical in nature, they will have a big impact on the ability of Māori organisations to get on to do the mahi and to exercise their responsibilities in the vein and in the realm of rangatiratanga. We have a duty to ensure legislation is current, fit for purpose, and that addresses present and future needs. I'm confident that the amendments in this bill will do just this, and I look forward to the support of other members of this House. With those final words, Mr Speaker, I commend the bill to the House. Tēnā tātou, katoa.
The motion is that the question be agreed. The Honourable Willie Jackson.
Kia ora tātou, kia ora Mr Speaker. Not a very particularly controversial bill at all, something that obviously we should all be supporting to get our, so that we're able to get our communities up to scratch. This has been lagging for too long, something that we should have probably dealt with too. So I commend the Minister for getting on with the business. It's really important that we get up to speed in some areas, Mr Chair. I would ask the Minister to have a think, and I'm happy to work with him on it, to have a look at the Māori Community Development Act 1962. It's updating that in terms of the electronic areas and the chairperson and arrangements, but the Māori Community Development Act of 1962 is an area that the Minister will know has been a little bit controversial in the last few years, as we've had different organisations, Māori Wardens, New Zealand Māori Council talk about, Mr Chair, speaking about mandate and who should be representing them. So I'll be happy to spend some time with the Minister to go over that and some of the kōrero that we went through with New Zealand Māori Council, with Māori Wardens. And that's the thing with the Act. We're talking about an Act of 1962, Mr Chair, being pertinent and relevant in 2025. So while we've got some of the technical sides set up, and people should be able to now, as we all know, carry out their meetings and their business online, there are other areas I think that the Minister might want to get into with regards to mandate, who's representing who. Have the I'm not an advocate for taking away New Zealand Māori Council's rights to represent Māori Wardens, but that is something that needs to be traversed by the Minister. We put a lot of time in there in terms of the Māori Community Act, and really have a look at it, whether it's absolutely pertinent and relevant in 2025. Glad to, Mr Chair, to see our Turu Mo Te Reo Māori Language Act updated, clarifying the purpose of Te Mātāwai. It's important that not just the co-chair arrangements and support for our Te Reo Māori revitalisation be addressed, but what must also be addressed, Mr Speaker, is the government's response to Mātāwai. When I was Minister, we had regular meetings with our Māori organisations, and so it's good to clarify that, but we need to whakatinana this kaupapa, we need to strengthen it a bit more. So on top of that, we would like to see the Minister's commitment in terms of funding for our reo Māori. Mr Speaker, it's good we've got this kaupapa up, but we need to get kaupapa up where we're seeing meaningful funding going into some of our really, really important initiatives. Māori Television is not on this. We've got Māori Soldiers Trust Act, Māori Trust Boards, Māori Trustee Act, Te Turu Mo Te Reo Māori, but Te Turu Mo Te Reo, Ture Mo Te Reo Māori, I should say. Ture Mo Te Reo Māori is applicable in a general sense, particularly in terms of how we cover the reo in terms of Māori television and in terms of Māori radio. and so we want to hear from the Minister. What is his plan? What is his rautaki? What is his strategy in terms of advancing funding and pūtea for our iwi radio network, for our whakata Māori? It's not just about ticking a box and getting things going in a technical sense, but generally, obviously, this is a kaupapa that we as the opposition would always support, because this is something we would have done too, Mr. Speaker, if we were the government. So commend the Minister for getting on with it and support this bill going forward. Kia ora tātou.
Koe te pika.
HÖHANA LYNDON.
Tēnā koe te pika, e tuana hau ki te tautoko i tēnei pire, mo te rōpū kākāriki hoki. On behalf of the Green Party, I stand in tautoko alongside colleagues of the House for the Māori Purposes Bill, and knowing that it's an omnibus piece of legislation that covers a range of legislation that have been, I guess, dated, have limited the ability of organisations to do their business in these modern times. I think they were still faxing and required to post out their mail, some of the groups. But now, with the amendments that have been made, it will support all of our groups impacted here to be able to be stronger, better now and into the future. So when I consider the Māori Community Development Act and the way that they can now have their hui electronically and also to have co-chair arrangements, yay, awesome. Also the Māori Purposes Fund and the regulations around the purpose, but also the way that they can have hui and the models, great again. We've heard in the past some of the challenges of legislation that is not appropriate and has not moved with the times. This type of legislation just coming through quickly and making these amendments really ultimately will help the organisations. So whether it be tidying up the use of te reo Māori in legislation, whether it's about enabling co-chair arrangements and the ability for organisations to have more flexibility in hosting meetings, being able to make decisions, moving beyond telegraph and post. It's great to see we've come to this point in time in 2025. So on behalf of Te Rōpū Kākāriki, I stand and we tautoko. Kia ora.
Jenny Marcroft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First in support of the Māori Purposes Bill. As everyone so far who's contributed to this conversation we're having about the Māori Purposes Bill, put up by Honourable Tama Pōtaka, there was wide support for it, which is great to hear. It continues the theme of the day, really, which is great to be a part of. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister noted in his contribution, this Māori Purposes Bill will provide a suite of minor and technical amendments to remove some of the unnecessary administrative burden so that these organisations are able to focus on growth, and it's good to see that Labour and the Green Party will also be supporting the legislation. Mr. Speaker, an omnibus bill, and the Māori Purposes Bill in particular, is all about tidying up amendments in legislation, and often they're being characterised as a wash-up bill. In fact, previously, the Māori Purposes Bill in previous iterations and previous parliaments have been called the boil-up bill. Everything gets chucked in the pot, and what a delight it is when it's time to sit down and have your kai, particularly if there's watercress. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to mention a few of the things in this bill, just very briefly. In terms of New Zealand First, we've consistently stood for policies that enhance equality, equity, fairness and efficiency within New Zealand's legislative framework. We recognise the significance of Māori economic development and cultural revitalisation and the impact it has on the nation as a whole. We believe also in practical solutions to improve governance, reduce administrative burdens and ensure resources are utilised effectively for the benefit of all. Mr. Speaker, we support the bill because it's going to reinforce fairness and transparency by modernising the legislation that does in fact impact on Māori governance and economic opportunities. These amendments will promote autonomy and efficiency for the Māori organisations, reducing that administrative burden and requirement, bringing ourselves into the future, or at least 2025, by enabling electronic meetings and things. People do still have fax machines. It's actually unbelievable. Not many, but a few. But now, having meetings electronically, I know when I was part of my hapu's governance team, meeting always in the north, a lot of travel to do that, but to be able to do it by Zoom or other means made it so much easier to ensure people actually attend those meetings, and that's a good thing really. So on that, Mr Speaker, pleased to be supporting this bill, the Māori Purposes Bill. I commend it to the House.
Mr Speaker. Simon Court.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The ACT Party commends this bill to our House. It's largely a technical bill, an omnibus bill for minor technical amendments to Māori affairs legislation, modernising legislation, reducing administrative burdens and increasing autonomy for Māori entities. That's all in line with ACT values and with what this coalition government supports. Absolutely commended to the House. Mr Speaker.
Te pika.
Tākuta Ferris.
Oti rā tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kei te whare tēnei tūnga tuatai oku hoki nei ki tēnei whare me ona whakaritenga, kawenga, e mihi tonu ana. Tikana kia mihi a te hunga kātai anō ka wehe ake nei tō rātou rironga i a te maunga o Taranaki. Hoki rawa mai ki tēnei pire mō ngā mahi whakawhanake i ngā rawa o te iwi Māori. Ka tika rā mo tō tātou whare, me kaua rā tātou e tuku i ngā ture kia kohatu rāno kātahi whakatikahi ai. Kua rō te iwi Māori e whanga ana kia whakahuhia ngā ture e eke ai ngā whakaritenga o tēnā o ngā huinga tōpūtanga Māori, ngā kaporei hana Māori, e eke anō ai rātou ki te karamata-matatanga o tēnei me te whakawhanake i ngā rawa e mihi ana. Mr Speaker, tēnā koe, it's good to be back. And I stand to take this call just to raise a couple of additional thoughts, not to reiterate things that have already been said. But the bill is indeed a good step forward, but I would think that the House is a lot more advanced than just leaving bills to become so decrepit that we're making changes to allow things to be done online in this day and age. But in essence, these things need to be done, and there are many significant Māori organisations that have obviously waited a long time for that to happen. So that's good. But we also feel that it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity to open a broader discussion around the needs, the Māori development needs of some of the significant Māori organisations of the country who have obviously been stymied for a long time. Māori development is a key thing in the development of the whole country, so it should be something that's on the top of Tama Pōtaka's list. We also note that many of the issues that Māori are raising have raised from within the development field, and many others like tiriti compliance and the ability of Māori to develop Māori land unhindered are things that need to be brought to the table for discussion. These are all things that enhance everyone's lives and indeed the production and economy of the country as a whole. So although this discussion is opened here in this omnibus type fashion, we hope that the discussion is continued on and broadened out. Discussion on, things or the needs, the supports, the inputs required, the resources, the capability required to enhance the continued development of the Māori economy is something that bodes well for the future of all in Aotearoa. As we've recently seen at the close of last year, it's $119 billion. I'm sure a few tweaks to some legislation in this House would help unleash that to reach new heights. So we invite that discussion. Mr Speaker, we invite that discussion, and we hope that the Minister continues this good work, keep these regulations and legislative conditions up to speed with where the modern world is operating at, and that the discussion around the development of the Māori society, economy, the lot of it, becomes a focus for the government leading into this year. Nō reira, e tautoko ake nei te Pāti Māori tēnei o ngā pire, tuku nei ki te whare, kia ora tātou.
David McLeod.
Tēnā koe e te pika. Mark this day, I actually agree with the member Takuta Ferris. I think indeed what he talks about with regards to maximising the potential of Māori land, the Māori economy, all that sort of stuff, absolutely, I can't argue with that. Clearly, we've got some other pressing issues as well, but hopefully that is something that the government can turn its mind to in the short-term future. But this Māori Purposes Bill, it's been well traversed. The Minister gave a very good opening of what this bill actually does and the many acts that it affects, and basically the modernising of how Māori entities can get on with their business makes absolute sense. And I do note the numerous former Māori Purpose Acts of 1939, 45 and 73 are also going to be repealed as a result of this because they're no longer have any operative provisions in it. But this makes sense. I'm very pleased for it to be coming to a committee that I've been newly elected to the chair of, the Māori Affairs Committee, and we will look forward to opening up for submissions as soon as we can and allowing people to provide their thoughts and support, or even if they feel that there is some strengthening of what this bill actually has to do as well. So with that, I commend this bill to the House.
Well done. Great speech. This debate is interrupted and set down for resumption next sitting day. The House stands adjourned until 2 p.m. on Tuesday the 11th of February. Have a good weekend, everyone.